It's time for Intelligent Machines. Jeff Jarvis has the week off, but we've got Jacob Ward joining us, along with Paris Martineau, our guest, Daniel Oberhaus. He's the author of The Silicon Shrink, Why You Shouldn't Trust AI with Your Most Intimate Thoughts. Coming up next.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Intelligent Machines, episode 822, recorded Wednesday, June 4th, 2025. The One-Man Unicorn. It's time for Intelligent Machines, the show where we cover the latest in AI, robotics, and smart machines, the ones all around us these days. Very pleased to see Paris Martineau on the other side of the camera. Hi, Paris.
Hello.
Love your little kitty cat hairdo. That's
Thanks.
cute.
I believe that's the technical term for it. So
Kitty cat. You got a kitty cat.
That.
Yeah, I know. I'm with the kids. I'm hip. You're risen.
Yeah, you're hip.
You're risen
with
right
it.
now. Yeah. Everything I know about this lingo Paris has taught me. Jeff has the day off.
I don't take any responsibility.
It's all your fault. Jeff has the day off, so you don't have to hear the Craig Newmark jingle unless our good friend Jacob Ward has started working in some way. For Craig Newmark. Jacob is at theripcurrent.com and has been on our shows before. We love having him on. I think you were a guest on this show before anything else.
I have been. You know what's funny, Leo, is that when you guys reached out, I misread the email and thought it said that Leo was not going to be able to be on there and that they needed me to fill in.
I need you
role.
to take over for me.
And I was
Jacob.
like, oh my God. I was like, I can't believe. And I started thinking, I'm going to do this and how do I do this? And, blah, blah, blah. And then they said, no, it's just Jeff.
No.
And I was like, oh, thank God.
Just relax.
Sit back.
Just Jeff. Just that Yahoo.
I mean,
sit back. As they say, as the pilots say, sit back, relax.
Yeah, I don't have to drive the plane.
No, you do not. Jacob is the author of a really interesting book about AI called The Loop, how AI is creating a world without choices and how to fight back, which I really, really enjoyed. And I'm always glad to get you back on the show.
Man.
But this time you are on the other side because we have a guest today. Very happy to have Daniel Oberhaus. He is the author of a new book. Hello, Daniel. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
His new book is called The Silicon Shrink, came out in February. It talks about the use of AI in psychiatry. But Daniel's knows Paris because you work together at Wired magazine. He's also worked at Motherboard Vice and written for many, many, many magazines. His previous book, we won't mention because he wrote it as a child.
Child at the wee age of 23.
At a mere 23, he wrote about extraterrestrial languages, which we will, I think, have to get into. But first, let's talk about the Silicon Shrink. Welcome. It's good to have you here. The premise, as I understand it, is that people should not be using AI for psychotherapy.
Yeah, that's a really great, succinct explanation. I mean, the overall premise is that we shouldn't be using AI in psychiatry writ large. So any sort of mental health application is kind of putting the cart before the horse. Is really the main thesis, that we don't understand mental disorders well enough to automate them at scale. But that's exactly what's happening right now. So it's a bit of a warning about why that's a bad
it's happening
idea.
At scale now.
Oh yeah, man.
Correct.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like how?
Well, the therapeutic applications in terms of using them as a therapist, I would argue, is probably one of the more widely adopted ones. So there's tools that have been designed specifically to do that, such as Wobot. But
so are they apps? Is that mostly, or is it actually being
kind
used
of like
in a clinical
character
situation?
AI situation or something else?
Both, yeah. So Wobot would be an example of an app that was designed for therapeutic purposes. What's interesting about Wobot is like it won't call itself a therapist anywhere on this website. That's very intentional. It's a wellness app, but it's functionally it's a cognitive behavioral therapist.
What they're saying though is, there's a lack of therapists, or it takes a long time to get to see a mental health professional. So the implication is that's what you're going to see,
right?
But it's not. It's an AI.
They've explicitly said it's not meant to be a substitute for a therapist.
Okay.
Yeah. And
so when I say this to people is most common reaction is, well, not everyone can afford to go to psychotherapy, let alone psychiatry, which is even more expensive. Isn't it better to have an AI shrink than nothing at all?
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of the profound ethical question, right? So this is the primary argument I think made in favor of it, and I'll start by steel manning it, which is there is an acute shortage of mental health professionals. I think something on the order of about 2/3 of U.S. counties don't have a practicing psychiatrist within them, which is wild. But even if you do have access to them, there's a lot of stigma that is wrapped up in seeking mental health services. It's challenging to get access. I have lots of friends in New York City who they can afford them. There's plenty of therapists in New York City, and they still can't get access. Yes, and it is expensive.
My therapist is $235 an hour.
So you went for the bargain one.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's
They're
cheaper
more
than
than
my
that?
therapist.
You got grandfathered in.
You're kidding.
Mine on a payment reduction is $250.
Oh my God. Well, it is Petaluma. It's not New York City. So maybe, I mean.
Yeah, you got those small town prices.
Do you know offhand, Daniel, what the mean cost for psychotherapy is?
I don't offhand, although I've never met anyone who has told me it's like, wow, that was so affordable.
No, it's not affordable. And of course, a lot of health plans either don't offer it, or I'm on Kaiser, and they offer psychotherapy or even psychiatry, but they only give you 10 sessions. After that, you're on your own.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
There's a limit to it.
First 10 are free.
I think, can I jump in, Daniel? I just want to say, like, first of all, just compliments on this concept. Like, just the concept of this book is so smart, because I feel like, I wrote this kind of like early worried book about AI in general, sort of, and I touched a little bit on therapy, but that you went deep on this, I think, is such a smart thing. And this notion, you talk about the idea that, first this thing of should we be okay with trying to simulate a service we no longer have, is sort of the industry argument, right? That like, well, nobody is going to do this job, so we need to come in and bring these folks in. And yet, I'm curious what you think, like, there's the ethical question, but then there's also this question of like, if we start to normalize simulated therapists and using large language models for therapists and so forth, will anyone ever be able to be a human therapist again? Or is that sort of like, do you worry about a downward spiral in which we no longer have human therapists sort of at all at the end of this?
I'm not as worried about that. I appreciate you saying this was a good idea. The kind of an interesting backstory about this book is I started pitching this around, or my agent did, rather. I should give Robert credit there, in 2019. So prior to ChatGPT becoming a thing, and we got in front of all the big four publishers, and they're like, this is a really interesting subject, but kind of niche. It's maybe good for academics, like save it for the university campuses. No, it's like, it doesn't have broad appeal. No one cares about this. Then ChatGPT happened, and now actually
Tell me about it, dude.
Yeah,
I had the same timing. We didn't even put AI on the cover of the book because we thought it would be too nerdy.
Yeah. And now it's like I literally just this like a week and a half ago, I was at my barber, and shout out Mark, but he was like, hey, have you heard of this thing called ChatGPT? And I thought he was joking at first. I was like, Mark, you're like a 29-year-old guy, and you're telling me you just found out about ChatGPT in May of 2025. And he said, yes. And so I was like, okay, well, now I'm dying to know, like, what are you using it for? And he's like, oh, at first just like asking it questions, kind of like messing around with it, having fun. But he's like, I use it almost daily for therapy. And I was like, there's no way, really? Like, and he's like, yeah, so I was like, tell me what you like about it. And, the things you might expect, it's very low cost. It doesn't have the stigma.
Also, there's not a human on the other side who might be judging you.
Yeah.
It's almost in a way, which is both its advantage and disadvantage, impersonal.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, my therapist, I have a relationship with, and I think it's important to have a relationship with your therapist, which obviously you can't have with an AI, but especially for people just starting out, it might be easier to talk to an AI.
Yeah, I mean, I was just at a book festival this last weekend, and I had a woman come up to me afterwards who was like, I think what you're saying is important, but she's like, I just had my husband who has rejected therapy for a long time, and she's like, he needs it. I was like, okay, that's
funny. What every wife says, so that's okay. We'll accept that. Yeah,
she's been trying to get him to kind of at least consider it, and so she used ChatGPT as kind of an easy way in, and he really adopted to it to the point where now he's actually open to going to a human therapist.
It got him started talking.
Exactly.
In a safer way.
Yes, and there's actually
and I
data.
have to point out, I understand there could be downsides. ChatGPT could say, oh, well, really, your life sucks. You shouldn't stick around. But I could see a human therapist, and I know many cases of. First of all, there's no requirements to put up a shingle saying I'm a counselor. So there, you might ask as a potential patient, what's your training, what's your degree, but you don't have to have a degree in it. You don't have to have training in it. And there are plenty of counselors who do have training who might not be very good, who might even be dangerous.
Right. You forget that there's a bell curve of doctors as well, right? Like
same thing with physicians.
There is such thing as the worst doctor in the world, and it might be yours.
The thing is, like, so when there was a study that just came out that showed basically these makers of AI were trying to figure out a benchmark for the degree to which AI tries to suck up to you and make you
sycophantic.
Sycophantic AI, right? And they were trying to figure out the degree to which these models were doing it, because there was a lot of anecdotal evidence that these models will just try to flatter you all the time and reinforce your ideas and And so they used like thousands and thousands of Am I the Asshole subreddit posts, so the subreddit Am I the Asshole, right, which tells these incredibly embarrassing stories. Did I do something terrible? And
they were doing fake posts though, right?
No, that was a different subreddit.
They pulled in like thousands of
that was
these.
right. Talk me out of it or whatever.
Right. And what they found was that these models are incredibly sycophantic, and that there is a way, and not only are they very sycophantic, they have no idea how you would fix this problem. And so to me, one of the things is like, no matter how bad the human therapist is, and there's plenty of bad human therapists, they're at least trained not to just tell you that your ideas are a good idea. They're trained in some way to try and challenge your thinking on this stuff.
Not all of them.
Or at least or at least the ones that aren't trained to have a perspective of some sort.
Right.
They're coming at the conversation with a perspective on the world that is going to shape how they respond to you and how they interpret your responses.
Right.
Versus a chatbot or a large language model powered sort of dynamic is going to be inherently kind of reflexive and sycophantic. I mean, what did you find in your research on this, like about the nature of this kind of relationship? And I've assumed there are both like, there's a promise to it, but then also peril related to this.
Yes. So the research is actually pretty interesting on this. And to kind of go back to an earlier point is DARPA in 2014, they had partnered with the University of Southern California to do a study on exactly this. They brought a bunch of veterans in and ran a study where there was a female presenting therapist avatar. One study group was told that there was a therapist on the other side, and they were basically just interacting through this digital representation of them. And the other one was told there's no person on the other side, you're just talking to a robot. And they were doing a lot of like facial recognition stuff, which is a whole other can of worms in terms of that not actually being a thing. But what they found actually was that the veterans who interacted and knew they were interacting only with an AI actually had better, like they would disclose more information, and they actually got more value out of the therapeutic sessions than the veterans that thought they were interacting with a human through an AI avatar, which there's like some, limitations to that study model, but outside of like, and this isn't the only study that has done this, but going back to the very beginnings of the field, there was a researcher at MIT named Joseph Weizenbaum, who in the 1960s, a lot of people are familiar with this, has created this chatbot called Eliza. Yes. And was horrified that people would interact with it as if it were real. And it had this shtick of being a therapist, but people would ask him to leave the room because they would actually want to talk with it. And for him, it was just a way to study human-computer interaction.
Although he did want it to be a kind of a Rogerian therapist, yes. Right?
But he, to Daniel's point, he quit the field. He was so horrified that he pissed. Walked away. He was pissed.
Because the thing is, it wasn't even that like advanced. Like I believe the main thing
it was terrible.
Just kind of,
it's like a
just reflect whatever you said back to you.
Yeah,
with
that's
like
basically
a phrase
what it
or two
did.
at the end.
And that's why he said it's like a Rogerian therapist who does in fact reflect a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What do you think about that? What does that tell you? Yeah.
I think so. This kind of comes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning. So there's apps that, and we should also mention that, the AI therapist is what most people think about when they think about AI in this context. But like, this is a very broad field. It's just kind of like the tip of that iceberg is this application. But within this application, there's apps like Wobot that were designed with the intention of being used for some sort of therapeutic purpose, even if they don't call them therapists. But then there's this other category of things such as ChatGPT that were never intended for therapy that people naturally use them for. And that is truly as old. It's like it started basically with Joseph Weizenbaum, but people have been using Siri for this way. People have been using ChatGPT for this way. There is something so natural about doing this. Like my barber, first thing, what does he do? Like within an hour of having access to this tool, therapist. I don't know what that is. So I people have parasocial relationships with celebrities online. They have parasocial relationships with AI celebrities online, from what I gather now. So there is something about that I find just very, very interesting. The book doesn't go into as much of the kind of the why behind that relationship building, but it does seem to just come so incredibly naturally. But then there's challenges with that, right? So like a very recent news item is the character AI thing with a young man taking his life, and I believe the American Psychological Association is now bringing this to the FTC to investigate. Basically who's at fault for that, because you had mentioned earlier, it's like you don't necessarily need a license to practice as a counselor. You definitely do as a psychiatrist, but even if I go to my therapist, the data I give them is subject to HIPAA restrictions in terms of how they can use that. Most tools that you have access to in the context of AI and psychiatry, they are not HIPAA protected. Your data is just...
Wobot says it is.
Do they say that it's comparable to HIPAA? Because like they're not regulated. They don't actually have to. They're just, saying we're going to abide by that because we're nice. But like
they're not regulated. HIPAA compliant on their front page.
Right, but like he says, that's right. That's marketing more. I mean, they may very well be HIPAA compliant, but they don't have to be.
Right.
Yeah.
So they could
they're not
tomorrow
being checked
say,
whether they're
let's
HIPAA
not
compliant.
be HIPAA compliant, and they could really reveal everything to an advertiser or whatever.
I mean, it's interesting. This kind of touches on I feel like discuss in the book this concept of like a psychiatric surveillance economy that these tools are enabling. Could you kind of elaborate on what that entails and kind of what impact that could have on like individuals' privacy or autonomy as they kind of use these tools?
Sure. Yeah. And, I'm a big fan of Shoshana Zuboff, who, kind of coined this idea of
surveillance capitalism. Yeah.
Right. And so the argument was that this is kind of a new front in that. And the core idea here is that when some people hear about AI and psychiatry, their first thought is, well, that sounds bad, but I'm not in therapy. It's not going to affect me. Like, sucks for the patients, but it's not something that's going to affect me in my day-to-day life. The problem with this is that the way these tools are effective is essentially through dragnet data ingestion. And the reason for that is because we don't know what mental disorders are. Like, psychiatry is the only medical profession that has not a single organic, like, undisputed biomarker for any of the diseases it claims
There's the
to treat.
DSM.
Correct.
I mean, they have a
But I
diagnostic
feel like
manual.
undisputed is the kind of key.
Well,
word,
it's accepted. I don't know if it's undisputed. Nothing in the world is undisputed.
I mean, I feel like the
roundness of
DSM,
the
even
earth.
among itself, changes dramatically.
I think there's some real problems with the DSM.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. But it is an accepted standard for diagnostic.
Well, I would I would challenge that. So the National Institutes of Mental Health under Thomas Insel in 2013, they said they weren't going to give grant money anymore to any study that was purely relying on DSM criteria because of how inaccurate it was for diagnostics. So it is the standard, but the way that those diagnoses
Not a very
are
good standard.
Well, it's not. It's generally not based on evidence.
This is from the American Psychiatric Association. It's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. If you go to a therapist or a psychiatrist on insurance, they're going to categorize you using the DSM. But for a long time, DSM considered homosexuality, for instance, a mental disorder. There have been all sorts of problems with the DSM.
And it takes forever for things like gambling to get in as an official piece of, as an accepted addiction and that kind of thing. It took
but in a way, that underscores my initial point, which is humans are pretty flawed in this too, right? This isn't created by AI. This is created by humans. I feel like you could train an LLM, just for argument's sake, to not say things like, well, you're an idiot, or, you should try methamphetamine, but instead to say, just encouraging, listening things, and that it would be of therapeutic, because part of the, I mean, at least Freud thought part of the value of talk therapy is simply talking, right? Not necessarily the therapist's input, but the actual expression of what's going on with you is sufficient. Couldn't an LLM be, I think Google has an LLM that's supposedly trained to do that. Is that not acceptable? I think that might be a very valuable tool.
It's funny, you guys, I was literally just having a conversation for my podcast moments ago with a psychiatrist who's now a British politician. He's a really interesting guy. And he was the architect of the Good Friday Accords that ended the troubles in Northern Ireland.
Wow.
Fascinating guy named Lord John Alderdice. And he was saying that the key for in both individual psychiatry and in trying to get, Protestants and Catholics to sit at a table and agree to not killing each other has to do with being able to express yourself, absolutely, but also being very effectively heard. That that you have to be heard in a way that feels real to you in order for it to have the true sort of, catalytic quality.
Right.
And for me, that's the thing that it feels to me like AI doesn't do, right? Is this feel? I mean, maybe it does. I don't know.
We know it doesn't, right? Because we know how it works. But if it feels like it does,
maybe it feels that, until I said it, I hadn't even really thought of that. Maybe especially to a certain generation of people, like maybe that's maybe you feel heard in a way that you don't with humans if you've sort of grown up in that generation or the rest of it.
I have a close family member who's bipolar under good psychiatric treatment. She's doing very well. She talks to her chatbot. She has a therapist and a psychiatrist, but she talks to her chatbot and really gets a lot out of it. Mm-hmm. If I thought it was dangerous for her, and it could be because, she's bipolar, I would say you can't do that. But I think she gets a lot out of it.
Mm-hmm. Daniel, just to ask you a question here, you have this really cool concept in the book that I really appreciate, which is this idea that somehow we're going to wind up in a kind of digital asylum situation. And you use that term asylum as this sort of symbol of where things could go wrong. And I just think it's so interesting, this notion, because I bump into this all the time as a tech writer, and I know you think about this too, that this thing of, if we make a better, a more efficient, more cost-effective digital solution to a thing, and you wind up kind of giving up on the harder human version of it because you've achieved marginal utility by making something digital, are you sort of, are you giving up in a way that's bad is sort of my question. And in this case, I just want to hear you talk a little bit about this notion of creating a kind of asylum, which for me, as I understand it, is sort of this idea that we're somehow going to warehouse people with these digital tools rather than actually making sure we address them in effective ways. Am I understanding that concept right?
Yeah, and it comes back to what Paris was speaking to earlier about the psychiatric surveillance economy, and so kind of close the loop there. The challenge with a lot of these tools right now is we don't have a good understanding of what data is going to, or actually, I'll unpack this a little bit more. So the reason why a lot of psychiatrists and people in the mental health profession find the idea of using AI so attractive is because if you go to a mental health provider, assuming that you're not in an inpatient facility, you're likely going to see them maybe for 1 hour a week. Maybe you can talk to them on the phone or text them, whatever, but it's relatively little context. So the therapist or the mental health professional, we'll just use psychiatrist as shorthand, has a very limited data set. And when you come to the, an outpatient meeting, for instance, you're relying on the patient's recall. How was your last week been? How have you been feeling, et cetera? And so there's, surveys you can send out for momentary ecological assessments, for instance, to kind of get more in situ data. But the vast majority of the time that you are awake, you have no data on that patient, how they're feeling, their behaviors, their thought patterns, et cetera. What's nice about AI is we all walk around with a pretty sophisticated computer in our pocket right now, and we're just bleeding off all of this digital exhaust all the time. And so the thinking around a lot of the kind of push for AI and psychiatry is that we can use this data that we're generating, because most people are spending a significant amount of time every single day in front of a digital network device. And this data, even if it's not what am I writing into the computer? It might just be like my typing speed or my scrolling speed. And these things that are almost happening at a subconscious level might hold clues to my mental state and my mental health. It's a really appealing idea. There's very little data to back it up that it works. And in fact, the NIMH former chief who was there for about 10 years, his name was Thomas Insel, he left to go work at Google to pursue this idea. And then he launched a company called MindStrong to pursue this idea. It's the most well-capitalized startup in history, raised $100 million. And in 2023, it completely shut down. And they never said why. Wow. Presumably, it's not because of how well it worked. And so there was very little data this entire time about this. And so the challenge right now is like, that is a very attractive idea. If that works, I'm all for it. But we don't know what data is going to have like the best read in terms of actually measuring my mental health so I can correlate it with perhaps a diagnosis. How do I know that I'm about to enter into a crisis? So you basically have to be monitoring everything I'm doing all the time around the clock to make sure that A, I don't have a crisis while you're not watching. And then B, well, maybe it turns out that my typing speed was like the X factor that you can map to the, like, it correlates very highly with major depression, but we don't know that. So right now we're kind of just hoovering up everything and seeing like what matches best and trying to like fit the box around this person. So that's kind of the surveillance economy aspect of it. And then to the asylum piece, that's kind of an interesting historical analogy in the sense of asylums, like prior to roughly the 19th century, the way that the mentally ill, what they would have called like, people with madness, were basically just warehouse. They were put in prisons. They were cared for if they were rich by kind of like, they just hire a benefactor to like put them in a outhouse somewhere where they were kept away from polite society. Then in the 19th century, around the Enlightenment, a bunch of, I think, people with very good intentions said, well, hey, maybe we can use the asylum for therapeutic purposes, and we can actually use it as a place for rehabilitation. People in prisons were thinking about the same thing. And it's just like, it shouldn't have a custodial function. It should have a healing function. That went really, really well for a few decades. And then people just kept coming, and the asylums essentially became overwhelmed. And so the number of patients in the asylum in the US hit its peak in the 1930s, I believe. You'll have to check me on that. But like pretty late into the game in the 20th century, before the population started declining. And then there was, of course, the turnout of all the patients around the Kennedy administration with disastrous results that we're still dealing with today. But the asylum basically became a victim of its own like good intentions, in the sense of it just became overwhelmed, and it was no longer able to fulfill its therapeutic purpose, and essentially reverted back to a custodial function. And so I think something similar is happening now. It's just much harder to see because it's not physical. But these algorithms are beginning to be run on any sort of institutional computer, right? So like you're seeing suicide detection algorithms in K through 12, you're seeing them in colleges, you're seeing them in government institutions, you're seeing them in offices, because happy workers, it turns out, are actually more efficient. So you can say it's for their mental health, but really it's because you'll get better products. But like judgments aside, these things are being implemented on our computers. And you can say, well, maybe I don't work in an institution. Like this doesn't affect me. If you use Facebook, it does, because they have a suicide algorithm monitoring you too. Not if you're in the EU, because they banned it due to privacy reasons. But if you're in the US, they do. So it is there. It's already here. And it's only
they're doing that to try to mitigate.
Correct.
Teenage suicide, though. I mean, is it ineffective?
We don't know. They don't publish the data.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing that we all worry about, right, is that they might, like, my worry is that, like, because the market incentive is there to adopt it, because it's just so much easier to deploy 1 million digital therapists than it is to train and deploy human therapists, that we're going to sort of do that, and by the logic of Silicon Valley, just kind of like, iterate as we go, before we even know whether that's effective.
Yeah, moving fast and breaking things isn't so hot if you're breaking people.
Yeah, that's the thing I worry about.
But what is the cause? Do we know what the cause of the therapist shortage is? Is it something we can fix?
That's a great question. There's several contributing factors. One is it's a pretty brutal job. Like when you think about what a therapist is doing all day, you're basically a receptacle for people's problems, which could vary from very day to day, kind of just the living or the worried well, I think is what Freud called them, to people who maybe they're harboring suicidal ideation, maybe they're the victims of abuse, maybe they're abusing others. So you're dealing with just heavy shit professionally. So not very attractive from that. So there's a huge rate of clinician burnout.
Of course, you could say the same of police officers. We don't have a lack of police officers.
I actually don't know.
think is also a big problem, I would assume,
Yes.
is police officers get salary and overtime. Therapists are typically
You're kinda
beholden to an
hustling.
hourly rate.
Yeah.
They have to hustle, try and figure out how to make it worth it with insurance. They have to deal with reimbursement. They have to deal with the fact that clients can't really pay.
I know a lot of therapists and a lot of
$250
very
an
happy
hour.
therapists who are working very well. My ex-wife is a therapist. It takes a certain kind of person. My guess is that there just aren't that many people who would be good at it or would want to do it. Even if you funded it, even if you promoted it, even if you had college programs and everybody said, this is a great job, there just aren't that many people who have the skills to do it or the desire to do it. Would be my guess.
I mean, here in
I think-
California, they had to create a whole other category called a marriage and family therapist.
Yeah, my ex-wife was an MFT. Yep.
And an MFT, right? That's a specific California thing. You can't practice in other countries, in other states. They created it because of this huge shortage. I mean, I'm looking at the American Counseling Association site. They're saying lack of funding, poor reimbursement rates, low retention, huge need.
She had to get a master's degree. She had to pass an exam. She had to have many, many hours in training with an accomplished psychotherapist working with her to get the MFT. Actually, she had an MFCC initially. So it is not the kind of thing you hang on a shingle and the next day you're taking patients.
Yeah, I certainly don't mean to suggest that she's not legit. I'm just saying that it's a reflection of how desperate California was.
Yeah, but
that
it's
it
still
had to create a slightly easier way of getting as many people.
Still wasn't that
as
easy.
possible.
Let me just.
Yeah, right,
I just want to
right.
say it was a good qualifying process, I would say, and a lot of people probably wouldn't get through it. It's also expensive, by the way, because you have to get a master's.
Yeah.
It's funny. Because I'm in this funny moment where I'm no longer a full-time journalist. I've been thinking, like, what do I do with myself? And I started looking at being a therapist.
I saw you're a fellow at Stanford in behavioral sciences.
I did a fellowship there as a journalist, and that got me thinking about it. But thinking about like becoming a therapist. Turns out it's such a hard road. It didn't. My wife looks at the numbers. She's a much more practical person than I do, and she was like, "These numbers don't make any sense for our."
I think you'd have to have a calling. Honestly, to be a good one anyway. And the good therapists I know, they have a calling. It's like, it's like being a priest. It's like you have to really have that nature and want to be of service. And it is a sacrifice. I'm sure it's a I can't imagine doing it. And it takes a lot of training to be a good one. So the reason I ask is I suspect we're never going to have enough.
Yeah.
So maybe there is some way to use AI is there Daniel, is there any safe way to do this?
Yeah. And so there's like a few points that I really want to make sure I clarify. One is that this isn't a book, and it's not my opinion at all that people just shouldn't use them, full stop. Right. So like, for instance, your family member, I know lots of people who do this, by Barbara included. And I'm not here to tell them don't. In the same way that I wouldn't tell someone, hey, don't take the pills that your psychiatrist gave you, right? But what I will say is like, hey, we actually do have a massive overdiagnosis problem that has led to a massive uptake in psychiatric drug use. Maybe that was out of best interest. Maybe that was out of industry interest. It doesn't really matter. Like, the fact is, there are a lot of people on psychiatric drugs now. But what's interesting about that is the results have gotten worse over the past 20 years. Yeah. This is the only medical specialty, once again, where as it progresses, the outcomes are getting worse for patients. That's shocking. We spend billions and billions of dollars doing this. I don't think it has anything to do with the intentions or the capabilities of therapists and people who work in this. I have nothing but very, very deep respect for them. So I just wanted to say, like, I don't, like, people ask me this all the time now. It's like, I don't think that you just shouldn't use it, but I do think you should like read, what's on the tin. What am I going to get from this? What are the risks? What are its limitations? I think that's very important to know, and it's often very lost. Like, we were just looking at Wobot's website, and it'd be very hard to tell that wasn't subject, like, it wasn't regulated as a HIPAA compliant organization. It is HIPAA compliant, that is true, but there's this kind of unspoken thing about, but like, we don't have to. And so that's the kind of thing where this was more meant to be kind of like a shot over the bow, be like, this is happening, this is real. I'm the last person who's going to say that there aren't people getting benefits from this. There's definitely people getting benefits from this. And I think that's fantastic. I also think, to your point, Leo, can we use these things effectively? My answer is like an optimistic kind of yes, I think. Was so interesting about writing this book is this is an issue that has become very topical because of ChatGPT, but it's about 70 years old, and it goes right back to the beginning of artificial intelligence as a field. And in fact, Carl Sagan in the 1970s wrote an article for Natural Science where he predicted a future where there would be like almost telephone booth therapists to deal with a therapist shortage in his day, 50 years ago. So it's definitely not going away. The tools have gotten better. And I think what's really interesting about, everyone kind of indexes on AI therapy. Like the book covers a lot of different technologies, and there are certainly a lot of other ones that I think are much more nefarious. But as far as AI therapy goes, most of the AI therapists are implemented as cognitive behavioral therapists. And what's interesting about CBT is when you really zoom out about what it's trying to do, a lot of people, I think, look at therapists as like almost gurus, but like that's not what they are. They're actually teaching you how to help yourself, right? Like they are giving you the tools to improve the way you think, to improve your behaviors in ways that are like less maladaptive and increase your overall well-being. That's what a good CBT therapist should do. And to the extent that that's what they're there for and what they're trying to achieve, the programming for CBT is actually, it lends itself very well to being implemented in an algorithm in the same way that we were talking about Rogerian's therapists. That was a little bit more hacky, what Joseph Weizenbaum was doing, but as a way of delivering care, CBT is actually very primed for application in LLMs. There's, we're pretty early days here, but I think that's phenomenal if that works out and we can get people care and it's proven to be effective. My question right now is why can't anyone show me data saying that this is at least as good as a human therapist? Because the pushback I usually get is it's better than nothing, but then I say, can you prove that? And the answer is no, you actually can't. There's no data showing that because, like, for instance, I was just talking to the New York Times a few weeks ago about K through 12 suicide monitoring platforms, right? And you're like, how could that possibly be something that anyone would ever be like, hey, wait a second, we may not want that. It's like, it almost sounds like you're advocating for children killing themselves. And it's like, that's not what I'm advocating for at all. But there's this tendency to say we must do this because it might save one life. And that is a philosophical and a moral argument you can make. And lots of people do. But there's also lots of people that say, hey, maybe we shouldn't all just be forced to like participate in these systems just because one person thinks it might help a kid, because we actually don't know like if that would have happened regardless. There's just so little data, and the companies that are building these aren't forthcoming with it at all. I don't know if that's because the data suggests that maybe it isn't as effective as they would want you to believe, or if it's just not, if it just doesn't exist yet. My experience with tech companies is when they have data that shows their thing works, they want to tell you about that.
They would let you know. Yes.
Yeah.
There will be 7 press releases and a web conference.
Yes. So it's very curious that we're missing that. And, if you go on these sites and look at them, a lot of the sites will have data and it'll say, they'll make some very large claims. But if you actually click on the peer-reviewed research that they are claiming backs it up, what you'll find is, for instance, there was a chatbot that was claiming, it had these massive mental health benefits for college students with depression. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe we found one that worked. And then I went to look at the study, and what they were actually showing was that this chatbot was better than a government pamphlet in a cohort of about 50 college students over 2 weeks. That's not nothing, but like, I don't know. It's not really what you're saying on the website either, right? Like you're
better than a pamphlet.
Right. I was like, okay,
people tell that to investors.
Yeah, I'm willing to believe that actually, that it is better than a pamphlet. I'm less willing to believe that you are just across the board, like lowering depression rates by 50%. It was like something very grandiose like that. But that was the case, but only with that very important asterisk. And so there's a lot of that in this field. And that's the thing that is so disturbing to me about this world that you're covering in this book, right? Is that like in the United States, particularly, this kind of thing is a business, whereas in other countries, it's a civic service. It's a national service. Your therapist is not, you go to your national health service in the UK or, other places for your behavioral therapy or whatever else you're going to need. It's only here where everything's privatized that we would even consider that we would need a digital replacement for this stuff. And then we're all just kind of like hostage to the marketing, to how truthful the marketing is. It's so cynical. it's shocking to me. So like to take Wobot, for instance, I feel like I pick on them. I actually have no beef with Wobot. It's just like probably the most well-known one, but they are currently doing a FDA trial. And what's surprising to me about that is most things that have to go through an FDA trial, you cannot access them prior to going that
clinical
trial.
approval. Yeah.
So is it like, is this a medical technology? Because like what's going through the trial is the exact same thing I can go download on Google Play. So what changed? So like I basically just have access to an unregulated medical technology, and the reason I do is because you're not saying it's medical, but you are like you aspire to that, and that's shocking to me that you can do that. So I don't know. The UK is actually an interesting example because the NHS is also increasingly doing this. They have a pretty robust tech sector that's building stuff here for the same reasons, right? It's therapist shortages, but I think the number 2 and number 3 chat therapy bots are actually UK based.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
I understand the difficulty here. You should absolutely read Daniel's book because it goes into a lot more depth than we could possibly go into in half an hour. But it's, by the way, called The Silicon Shrink: How Artificial Intelligence Made the World an Asylum. It came out last month or a couple of months ago and is available on Amazon, as you can see, and Kindle or hardcover, and at your favorite bookstore, which you should absolutely patronize. But I feel like, you don't want to experiment with people's psyche. That's a very dangerous thing to experiment with. Of course, we also experiment with full self-driving in vehicles. Also dangerous. AI is involved in a lot of things. We're going to talk about some. Very dangerous. But at the same time, there is a need. We know there's a need. We know that in some cases it's useful. I don't think there's a clear answer on this one. I know you don't say don't do it. But I think it's important to think about the consequences of doing it. I just don't know if there's a clear answer. Like, is this a bad way? I feel like we need to look at it and think about it and move forward judiciously.
I feel like that's a possible answer. Is like that it needs to be. I
wouldn't throw it out.
Actually thought about.
Would you throw it out?
No, I mean I think that most things exist somewhere in grayscale rather than all black or all white.
Well, one thing I get out of this book is that we have come to at least expect in the United States that when someone offers you a therapy, it has been tested and validated in some form. That if you go to a licensed medical professional, they've been through some sort of training, and that your data will be kept private. What I think, Daniel, you've made such a good case on in this book is like those things don't apply to this sector.
Right.
And we're, as I'm sure we'll discuss later in the hour or later in the show, the budget bill that Congress is looking to pass right now would forbid states from regulating AI in any way for a decade. So the regulation of this kind of thing wouldn't even really be possible if under state law down the line if that bill goes through. So like we're living in this world where it's totally unregulated. And to me, if there's nothing else here, it suggests to me that some standards should be imposed on what is currently a totally Wild West.
Yeah, and I think to close the loop on this, like I'm very strongly in agreement with what you had said, Leo, because like I think the book is largely focused on what is the risk of if we do this and we don't put a check in, right? But I think the reason why this is a problem at all is because there's a lot of well-meaning people who say, what is the risk if we don't? Like if we must do something. The problem is that's like the famous politician's fallacy, right? Like we must do something. This is something. Therefore, we must do this. And it's like that's where I'm like, this is one tool in the toolkit, and all I'm saying is like, let's withhold judgment right now. Like these exist. They're all around you already. Let's take a beat. And all I'm asking is like, please just show me the data. Like, does this work as advertised? And the answer is like, it either doesn't exist or there no one is showing it to you. And so
it's hard though. This is hard data to produce. I mean, it's not.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I think we have a little bit of a crisis going. We have 2 school nurses for 1,500 students in my little town. Mm-hmm. That's not adequate. And we celebrate it because we've got 2. Mm-hmm. So we have a problem. I would, it'd be nice to say, everybody go be a therapist to your friends and neighbors. Go talk to them so they're not talking to robots. There are lots of things we could do. We should probably be doing them. And I'm not sure AI is the solution. And you aren't saying it, but I will say it. The sad thing is AI has also become a gold rush. And there are a lot of people out there trying to make a lot of money on any possible use of AI because it's easy to raise money for it, and which means there will be a lot of bad actors involved in this space and every other. And in this space, the hazards are great. So that is something else to be very aware of. Daniel, I want to thank you so much for your time. Daniel Oberhaus. The book is The Silicon Shrink, and well worth reading. I thank you for your time, and look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank
Daniel.
you so much. Appreciate the interest and the time.
Thank you.
Have a great one.
Buddy.
Take care.
See you guys.
We're going to take a little break. We have more to come on Intelligent Machines. Our show today brought to you by BigID, the next generation AI-powered data security, compliance, and privacy solution. Look, we know AI is transforming business, but there's risk. We talk about it all the time. Data risk, bias risks, and of course, compliance challenges. The question for every business today is, are you adopting AI responsibly? Well, BigID delivers end-to-end AI and data governance to help enterprises manage risk, enforce policies, and ensure responsible AI adoption. For one thing, businesses want to be very careful about the data they use for their AI, right? You want to make sure AI only accesses safe-to-use, relevant data that's automatically tagging sensitive data by policy and type, staying away from the stuff you don't want AI to have access to. That's why you need BigID. It's the only leading solution to uncover dark data through AI classification. It's actually a great use of that tool. To identify AI risk, to manage your data lifecycle, and to scale your AI strategy. Now, the nice thing about BigID, it integrates with your existing tech stack with unmatched data source coverage, and it allows you to automate privacy and security workflows. Take action on data risks with automated remediation orchestrations. You can automate privacy management, regulatory compliance, data rights requests, and more. Partners, of course, include everything you're using, including ServiceNow, Palo Alto Networks, Microsoft, Google, AWS. With BigID's advanced AI models, you gain visibility and control over all your data. It's the platform Intuit named #1 for data classification and accuracy, speed, and scalability. If you think about it, who would be a good customer for BigID? Somebody who has a lot of data in a lot of different places, in the cloud, on-prem. How about the U.S. Army? Can you imagine? They're in the process of moving into the cloud. They've got dark data everywhere. The U.S. Army uses BigID to illuminate dark data and to automate data retention. I've got this great quote from U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command. Listen to this. Quote, "The first wow moment with BigID came with being able to have that single interface that inventories a variety of data holdings, including structured and unstructured data across emails, zip files, SharePoint, databases, and more." Continue the quote, "To see that mass and to be able to correlate across those is completely novel. I've never seen a capability that brings this together like BigID does." Man, if this can solve the Army's problems, it can solve yours. CNBC recognized BigID as one of the top 25 startups for the enterprise. They were named to the Inc. 5000 and Deloitte 500 for 4 years running. The publisher of Cyber Defense Magazine says, quote, "BigID embodies 3 major features we judges look for to become winners: understanding tomorrow's threats today, providing a cost-effective solution, and innovating in unexpected ways that can help mitigate cyber risk and get one step ahead of the next breach." Start protecting your sensitive data wherever your data lives at bigid.com/IM. Get a free demo to see how BigID can help your organization reduce data risk and accelerate the adoption of generative AI. Again, that's BigID, bigid.com/IM. There's also a free guide to help you understand the risks of generative AI and data-driven strategies to ensure responsible and compliant AI adoption. Again, bigid.com/IM. We thank them so much for their support of Intelligent Machines. As I mentioned at the top of the hour, Jeff Jarvis is on, where is he? He's on assignment. He's out doing something.
I truly don't know.
He's being
where
a big
he is.
shot somewhere.
Whatever he's
He's
doing, I'm really
driving
grateful
because
that
he
he's
was
gone.
texting me earlier and was like, "Oh, sorry, that was a spelling mistake because I'm driving." And I was like, "Jeff, don't text me and drive."
Yeah, we're talking about the hazards of AI therapy. What about texting and driving? Well, anyway, we're really glad Jacob Ward could be here. The author of, as I mentioned, a really good book, The Loop. But Jacob has a checkered career in many different areas. He's a very smart guy. We've had him on many shows, and we're always glad to get Jacob in. So thank you for taking some time to be with us.
Always a pleasure. I just trying to be part of the club here. I really
Well,
like
you're
it.
in the club, Jacob.
All right, I'm in. Great.
Welcome. It's a Mickey Mouse Club in a way, but it's a good club. Lots of stories. We'll just do a tossed salad of stuff. The president of the United States has tapped Palantir to compile data on Americans. That's Alex Karp talking to somebody behind the American flag. Palantir is an interesting company. What do you know about Palantir, Jacob?
So Palantir, founded back in 2004, was trying to solve a problem that the U.S. military and intelligence communities had, which was they'd been recording tons and tons and tons and tons of surveillance data, audio and video in Iraq at the time, and they had no ability to parse it. They literally had dudes in rooms, scrolling through footage. And Palantir's idea was to get their arms around that and create basically a search engine for video. And they very quickly became sort of the data analysis cutting edge for the U.S. government. And they have a couple of core products. One is called Gotham, and now the new one's called Foundry. And what they basically say is, you give us a huge amount of your data, and we can parse it. And of course, now that we're in the world of transformer models and AI, they are vastly more effective than they used to be. So they are, their genesis is as a surveillance company. Now, the other thing that's really worth noting is you mentioned Alex Karp. Part of his pitch, so Palantir was created by Peter Thiel. It was founded by Peter Thiel, who's he's a very conservative libertarian guy. Was one of the angel investors in Facebook, and he was JD Vance's patron. Alex Karp, when he came in as CEO, has basically been sort of boasting that this is, not just a really effective form of data parsing. It is also, he sort of considers it kind of an ideological and literal weapon in the fight to sort of push Western democracy around the world. And I even have a quote here from something that he said recently. He was, he was on an earnings call earlier this year, and he said, Palantir, quote, this is the quote, Palantir is here to disrupt and make the institutions we partner with the very best in the world, and when it's necessary, to scare enemies and on occasion, kill them. And that's part of Palantir's spookiness, is that they are not just a tech provider. They're a little bit ideological, so much so that a group of Palantir ex-employees have actually put out a letter that basically called for the company to stop washing its hands of the creepy ways in which the technology is used, to start taking some more responsibility for it. And they wrote in the letter, big tech, including Palantir, is increasingly complicit, normalizing authoritarianism under the guise of a revolution led by oligarchs. We must resist this trend. So Palantir.
This is perhaps beside the point, but how do you become Palantir employees and not realize that that's the system you're taking part in?
I could tell you a little bit about that. I read his book, The Technological Republic, and Karp says in that Silicon Valley got misled, that in the last century, engineers, scientists worked with government for the general public weal. So he talks about the Manhattan Project to build the atom bomb. He talks about the internet. And he says, unfortunately, in this century, the Silicon Valley's been distracted by crap, by gadgets, by toys, by making money. And he says in this book, and I have to say, the first few chapters, I was starting to say, yeah, you're right. He says, what the best minds in our country should be doing is working with the government to protect the American way of life, our Western values. You use the word democracy, Jacob. I'm not convinced Alex Karp cares so much about democracy, although he has in the past been a donor to Democratic Party stuff. I mean, I don't think he's a MAGA Republican. But, and in the book, one of the victories that they tout, and I think it's a genuine victory, is in Iraq, there was a big problem with IEDs, these improvised explosive devices. You didn't know where they were going to be, and it was killing a lot of American soldiers. And Palantir came in, took these disparate, you talked about all these different videos and data sources, combined them, and was able to make a tool that kind of predicted where IEDs would likely to be. And he says, I haven't seen the numbers, but he says it was a great success, that it saved lives. And that was the beginning of their relationship with the U.S. government. He has a $795 million contract with the Department of Defense, got that last week. Just signed a $113 million contract. Actually, since Trump took office, they've signed more than $113 million in government spending. Among the things, and this is what scared me in this story, in this New York Times story, that they are going to be doing is combining data from the Social Security Administration and the Internal Revenue Service. Historically in the United States, the IRS has been very protective of its data, for instance. The Social Security Administration does not get IRS
historically data. Well, no, now it does. Now they're kind of commingling all of it.
But thanks to Doge, and now this is the next step. They want Palantir, and it seems on the face of it, oh, great idea. Just if you could just take everything the government knows about you, Paris, and put it in one big thing and analyze it with AI, just think of all the insights we'd get.
Insights galore.
So I can understand why the administration might want to do that, but I think it's also a privacy nightmare. The IRS knows so much about you, and combine all the government sources, there's nothing they don't know about you.
Also, isn't there that data center somewhere that has that's been storing all of our stuff for 30
NSA's
days?
Been doing that forever.
Oh, it's got all of our phone calls and everything like that. The FBI agent inside your computer. We're going to commingle that with our IRS data, whatever stuff immigration has, all of the little cameras that facial recognize us every time I walk outside the street. And then great. And then we'll just have that in a big data center that I'm sure will never get breached or used for any nefarious reasons.
Well, we kind of know the value, by the way, of this commingling the data. Well, we know it from a lot of different things, but most recently, there's a company called Flock that does cameras on many city streets, license plate recognition cameras and so forth. And I don't know if you just saw a story about the Texas cops using Flock data in states where abortion is legal to try to track down a woman who went out of state to get an abortion. And this is starting to become a little bit dystopian. The Times writes, creating detailed portraits of Americans based on government data is not just a pipe dream. Oh, I was hoping it was a pipe dream. The Trump administration has already sought access to hundreds of data points on citizens and others through government databases, including bank account numbers, the amount of their student debt. They've already promised that they're going to send people who owe money on their student loans into collections, their medical claims, their disability status. You remember RFK Jr. saying, head of Health and Human Services, we want to make a database of autistic people.
Yeah.
Imagine. Mr. Trump could use such information, the Times writes, to advance his political agenda by policing immigrants and punishing critics. It's a first step, frankly, to eugenics, to Nazi-style cleansing. I'm really concerned about how this data could be misused.
Yeah, I have two thoughts I want to share on this. So one is, there is a good way you could do this. And I so not to keep plugging my own thing here, but on the ripcurrent.com, there's an interview I have with the former president of Estonia, a guy named Toomas Ilves. And Estonia is a country that was crushed under Soviet oppression, incredibly impoverished coming out of the Soviet era, and very quickly figured out a digital future for itself, and really has turned itself into one of the great Western democracies and one of the great sort of things. So in this piece, American Surveillance System is coming on the ripcurrent.com, I sort of talk about this interview that I did with him.
I have an Estonian digital ID, by the way. I thought that was so
wow.
cool.
So this is what we're talking about. Okay, great. So when
I sent for it. Anybody in the,
wow,
in the world
I didn't know
can
that.
get one.
That's so cool. I didn't know that. I thought you had to be Estonian. Well,
No.
so you when you're born in Estonia, you get a digital ID like Leo seems to have. That's cool.
It doesn't say I'm an Estonian, but it's
No, but if you have any interactions with the Estonian government, it's your way of accessing it. So basically, what it is it's a digital ID that follows you through every single thing you do in your life: taxes, divorce, marriage. You get arrested, you go to the hospital. Your digital ID is how you are identified in each one.
How
of those
you
places.
vote, how you
vote.
sign documents.
That's right. Everything, and
Whoa.
and that is. It creates an incredibly convenient system. You can pay your taxes on your phone in 2 minutes each year. There's no accountant required because they already have under your digital ID exactly how much money you've made and who you've worked for. It's an incredible piece of
This is a
efficiency.
little terrifying, though, right?
Well,
Okay, that's the
what
thing that
keeps it-
terrifies you, that you could pay your taxes easily?
Well,
Well, no,
here's
but
what-
they know where all my money is.
Okay, the
here's what
IRS
the thing
knows
is.
where all your
Here's-
money is. They're just
but
making you
here's
do a
the
puzzle.
difference.
Sorry.
Here's the difference between it being really scary and being really awesome. So the reason it's awesome is that Tuma Silva said it's like a Christmas tree. Each record is hanging separately on the tree. So your health records and your bank records and your police records are separate ornaments. You have access to all of those, but none of them can talk to each other without your permission. So the police can't go to your health records, they can't go to your bank records. You are in charge of who gets to see what. And he said that is the specific problem they were trying to solve, because as soon as you merge them all, then the police can start using your bank records. And then your health insurance can start using your arrest records to determine whether you should be insured. And you can start hunting down dissidents and critics in the way that Trump's thing could conceivably make
That's
possible.
the problem is, okay, maybe you like the government today, but that data will be available to the next government and the next government and the next government. I should also point out that shortly after I got my Estonian digital ID, they had to recall it because they had a security flaw.
Oh, no way. Oh, yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah, this was back in 2017. They've probably solved that. I don't know, but they.
And the other point I want to make,
and this is why this is the central problem is once you centralize this data.
That's right.
The flaw could let attackers decrypt private data or impersonate citizens. So they had to have all the cards recalled and updated with new security certificates. There's your problem. Once you centralize it, however many controls you have, it's still all in one place.
Yeah.
And it just becomes a bigger and bigger target.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the other thing that I would say is that, so for all of the ideological talk around Alex Karp and what the CEO of Palantir says about, we need to get back to a world in which we're sort of serving a common good and blah, 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 blah. He, like all these tech people, fundamentally seems to believe. So I interviewed Palmer Luckey, who's
God, what a nut job.
He's
back at Meta.
He's the CEO. He's the former CEO of Anduril, which is another Peter Thiel company like Palantir, both named for Tolkien. Lord
That's
of the Rings.
That's the thing
mythology.
I hate the most about them. But
Yeah, it's so weird,
yes.
right? So, but they all say, on the one hand, we need to be creating these, something that helps the government and pushes Western values and blah, 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 blah. But at the same time, when you ask them, hey, but you have built a system that has created huge new moral complexity, and shouldn't you have to also invent the morals to go along with what you've built? They all say, no, that's not our job. It's up to people to vote in people to do that. Like, that's democracy's job. So they wash their hands of what could happen with this stuff. And in Palantir's case, when they've been asked by reporters, what the hell are you doing, giving Trump this potential, they refer they refer reporters to the blog where they say our software and services are used under direction from the organizations that license our product. These organizations define what can and cannot be done with their data. They control the Palantir accounts in which analysis is conducted. And
that's not a good answer.
So they're just saying it's not our problem, and that's what all these tech companies tend to say. It's not our problem. It's up to the users.
It's what the creators of Pegasus, the technology used to crack Apple cell phones, said is, well, we only sell our technology to democratic countries. It's not what they do with it. It's not up to us. Of course, that may
I
not
only
even
created
be
the ransomware. I didn't put it on the hospital
I didn't say what they
computer
should be
system.
doing.
I only manufactured the firearm. I didn't point it at anybody.
Leo, as our resident accelerationist, what do you think? Do you think that companies bear some responsibility in thinking about how their products should be used?
Oh yeah, and that's what Robert Oppenheimer realized after he invented the atomic bomb. He said, "Oh my God, what have we done?" And in fact, the thing that made him think that was the teller came to him and said, "Now next we're going to make an H bomb." And Oppenheimer said, no, the war's over. We don't need to do that. And the government said, we'll take it from here. And
I do think we need a new, some sort of tracker for the amount of times Manhattan Project is referenced in relation to new technologies, because it feels somewhat meaningful.
Well, I think it's a good analogy. I don't think it's a perfect analogy, but it is a good analogy.
I think you hear this again and again with various different technologies. And I just think it's very interesting that is where our mind immediately goes.
Yeah. Well, that was a technology that we, this is what they were talking about in the Technological Republic. This is a technology all the scientists, the best minds of America got together to win World War II, right? And by the way, the reason, that they gave for that is, well, if we don't do it, the Nazis are going to do it, which is exactly the reason AI accelerations give.
China's going to do it.
China's going to do it. If we don't do it, China now we've given Saudi Arabia the means. Saudi Arabia is going to do it. Somebody's going to do it. Maybe that's not untrue, but the problem is these technologies they aren't controllable. I think AI is probably already gone past the point of it. Because when Google wrote those seminal papers on transformers, they made them public. They gave them away. The 5 or 6 papers that define how to make LLMs are part of our public knowledge. No one has exclusive access to it. The only way we've been able to control proliferation is controlling these high-end NVIDIA chips, but I don't think that's going to last long. So it's out there, just as actually it's more out there than the atom bomb is. We're somewhat able to control proliferation of nuclear armaments. Your Substack is The Rip Current, and it's a podcast.
It's also a great podcast.
It's also a podcast.
So I literally had Paris on the other day. Paris was my
you were on
guest because you brought us together, Leo. And,
that's nice.
It was awesome.
We had a lovely conversation.
We got to.
What'd you talk about?
Well, we talked about why all the tech workers hate us, journalists.
Yeah, that was the theme. Is why is it so hard to get inside these companies? And Paris's answer was because they hate us. And
why tech people hate us journalists?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was the theme.
I mean, it's somewhat of a more flashy headline for the thing, but it is, I think, an interesting aspect of covering tech journalism that is different than covering politics or kind of other fields. In just there's this antagonism built into the sourcing base and a lack of reciprocity in the sourcing relationship, or at least in the perception of the sources, that you don't see in, for instance, DC politics. In politics, the people on the Hill realize hey, we got to play ball with these journalists, and it's also a good way to make sure my boss, gets up higher and my enemies go down lower. Is strategic leaking.
It's considered like an asset to be to have a relationship with a journalist when you're in DC, whereas in Silicon Valley, being in touch with journalists is not just a fireable offense, but you'll be banished from the industry forever if you're caught in some cases talking to journalists. And so, we talk a lot about how
emoji automated,
which is why, exactly. I mean, but the theme of the podcast is basically just how hard it is for Paris to get inside these companies and what a good job she has done.
Funny, it's in some ways that's changed because in my day, tech journalists was very much like Beltway journalism, where in order to get access to these companies, you had to play ball with these companies. That's your problem, Paris. You don't play ball.
That's right.
And so
I need to be kissing the
you
rain
remember
more.
this too, Jacob. You've been around a little bit. So there was this. It was the same thing with auto magazines, where you really couldn't trust the journalism, the tech journalism. We've had a guest on talking about this. Neerit, I can't. I'll have to get her name. I'll look it up. She's been on a show. The tech press was somewhat. Pardon me,
Nikita Roy?
No.
I mean, no, this was entirely true in like the halcyon days of tech journalism when, the biggest, flashiest pieces of tech journalism were like a Wired magazine cover with a bunch of boys sitting in a dorm room being like, gee, aren't these misunderstood geniuses swell? They've got some big ideas. Who's going to give them money? And it's like, that was, I think, maybe useful at a time that the industry was nascent there was
there's
little
more
coverage or understanding. But now that the power dynamic has shifted in tech versus the rest of the world, much less like tech versus even a smaller industry like media, it begets more critical and careful coverage.
That's because, again, you have a conscience. But, I have to...
It would be a lot easier if I didn't.
It wasn't that long ago that if Apple wanted a story, to set the stage for something they were up to, they would go to the Wall Street Journal and plant it. And there are plenty of journalists, I won't name names, who were kind of, in order to get access to the top. Apple was notorious for this, by the way, but I'm sure it was commonplace in Silicon Valley. To get to, access to the executives, you play ball with them. This is that beltway journalism. And Apple is notorious for they blackmailed me in a way because they blackballed me, let's put it that way, because I didn't play ball. And I noticed John Gruber, who's been for a long time, he's the creator of the Daring Fireball newsletter, an Apple, fanboy, went apostate a couple of months ago. He has a thing called the talk show he would do every year at WWDC, at the Big Apple conference, where he'd have the Big Apple executives on. And all of them, the top executives would go on the talk show. This year, they're not going on. And I think it may not be the case. There are other reasons Apple might not want to talk about what's happening in WWDC this year. But I think it's because he went apostate about a month ago and said Cupertino's lost its way. Apple's lost its way. They screwed up badly. They broke my heart, all of this stuff.
I mean, Apple, I feel like, is such a famous example of this, that even in like 2016, 2017, just as it was starting to shift a little bit, the mood of tech journalism from more like rah-rah to a bit more critical. Yeah. Even at that time, they were infamous in the industry of being like, if you did so much as not even criticize one of their products, but maybe described it in a way that they didn't want, that was still neutral, they'd be like, sorry, you get no review access ever. We will not answer any of your PR questions even.
I went on nightly news, on NBC Nightly News, probably 2 years ago, something like that, and I listed Apple among the companies that I consider to be surveillance companies. I said Apple, Facebook,
that they didn't like that.
Got a phone call over the weekend from a top Apple executive saying, how can you call us that? That's outrageous. And I said, well, if you look in the dictionary, like surveillance just means you're closely watching your customer. And they were like, but no person is doing the surveillance. I was like, that doesn't matter. Your system is automated. What are you talking about? That's the last conversation. That's the last time I ever, that's the last invitation.
They have a list. They have a list. Yeah. But lists have gone on also forever. I mean, it isn't anything new. You're right, Paris, because John C. Dvorak says he remembers being at Microsoft 30 years ago and walking by an office and seeing his name on an enemies list of people that nobody should talk to. This guy, he's on our enemies list. And he says he's asked many times since then and it was always denied, but he saw it. So I believe him.
I'm sorry though, but like you guys talking about how tech hates the journalists, but nothing compares to how much game companies hate game journalists. Nothing.
And yet at the same time, there are, you know this, Benito's worked for...
both of them. I worked for CNET and GameSpot, so I know both sides of that.
He's been on both. But there are companies that are in the pockets of game companies, right?
It's true. I mean, it's true.
Games journalists that are in the pocket.
Games journalists, yes, definitely.
When you read them, you know.
That dynamic of game reviewer, like movie reviewer or... at one time, Paris and I would have been employed, and Leo, you were probably part of this too, where we were sort of like reviewers of tech rather than talking about its ongoing implications or the rest of it. In the same way, like auto journalists are about like how's the handling, as opposed to like
what's the horsepower?
How many kids are getting killed by cars every year, right? That's not what autojournalism is about. And so that's interesting, that I would think that they'd be okay. Sure, you might get a bad review, but you're not talking about like it's ruining kids' brains, right? Like gaming journalists aren't doing that. I would imagine.
No, it's more about like access. It's like, especially now,
it's totally about access.
It's all about access. Like you don't get early copy of the game now because you talk bad about this company.
I'm seeing all these articles
today. It's not even talking bad about the company.
Yeah, it's not even talking bad.
I'm forgetting what recent example there was of maybe it was like a Nintendo game, some like large game in the last like 6 to 9 months. A reviewer had like described a level in just plain English terms, and like their entire outlet got like their access revoked from games from that company for a while because like they had said in some page of the PR thing, we don't want you to describe levels past this, or like something like that. And it's just, a strange mercurialness.
And they really love
Apple might have made this
because
Apple might have really brought this to a head because they're so famous for secrecy. And they're really adversarial. I mean, your experience, Jacob, is not rare. So, by the way, in my career, I stopped talking to PR. I stopped taking review units. I basically cut off any relationship. Now, I understand that that's a sacrifice because I don't have the inside, look at what's going on in a company. But my experience has been that's overrated. Often the company is just playing you.
But I think part of the interesting thing is you're able to do that because your podcast is largely talking about news, talking about your experience of products, covering this industry from kind of a bird's eye view. But when you are a working reporting journalist, part of the nature of the job, people like to, I feel like, kvetch online. They're like, journalists get to publish whatever they want. And I mean, I guess there's some people out there, but if you're an actual journalist employed at a place worth its salt, you have to reach out to a company if you're reporting something on them beforehand. Go over what you have reported on them on background or on the record. Get their take on all of it. And oftentimes that just means sitting there on the phone sometimes while someone yells and screams and lies at you and tries to get you
That's
fired
why I don't do
for reporting things that are just normal. But you can't opt out of that system.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've opted out. I got the privilege of opting out because I own the goddamn company. Yeah. Hey, we're going to take a break. We come back. I will talk about a journalist who has gone apostate and has really upset the AI community. But that's coming up in just a bit. Jacob Ward is here. So good to have you. The author of The Loop, his podcast and newsletter, theripcurrent.com. Obviously, he's got the best guests on of all. I mean, just really good.
Just following in your way.
JacobWard.com. Great to have you. Paris Martineau, tech journalist who is not afraid to offend any company.
It's true.
Whose lava lamp is finally heated up.
It's heated up. It's popping. It's having a great time.
It's a popping lava lamp. Our show today brought to you by our friends at OutSystems. This is the leading AI-powered application and agent development platform. Now, this is a really interesting story. They've been around for 20 years. You might say, wait a minute, OutSystems been around for 20 years? They weren't using AI back then. They were very early on the low-code, DevSecOps automation, things like that. They've been doing this for a long time. The mission of OutSystems to give every company the power to innovate through software. But I have to tell you, these guys are smart. And when it became possible to merge AI with DevSecOps automation and low-code, no-code environments, they jumped right on that. And they have created something truly powerful. Traditionally, you've got two choices when you need software for your enterprise. The IT teams can buy something off the shelf, a SaaS product. Yeah, it's fast. You got it right away, but you don't have any flexibility. And you've lost all differentiation because you're not the only ones using that tool. Oh, okay. So if it's not buy, maybe we'll build it. But I take it from me. I've done it. Building custom software costs a lot of money, a lot of time. And frankly, you often get a subpar product. So that build versus buy conundrum has been around a long time, but now AI has changed all that. They've forged the way for another path. It's, as I said, the fusion of AI, low-code, DevSecOps automation into a single development platform, OutSystems. Your team will build custom applications with AI agents just as easily as buying generic off-the-shelf sameware. And what's really great about OutSystems, they know what you need, so they've built in flexibility, security comes standard, scalability comes standard. With the AI-powered low-code, team can build custom, future-proof applications at the speed of buying with fully automated architecture. It's all built right in, security. The integrations you want are there, the data flows, absolutely control with permissions. The truth is, OutSystems is the last platform you need to buy because you can use it to build anything. You can even customize and extend your core systems. What I'm saying is build your future with OutSystems. Visit outsystems.com/twit to learn more. That's outsystems.com/twit. We thank them so much for supporting intelligent machines. And you support us if you go to that address so they know you saw it here. outsystems.com/twit. CNN offended the AI community, and in particular Dario Amodei, who is the Anthropic CEO, by saying there's a little bit of hype going on. Amodei told Anderson Cooper on CNN, AI is starting to get better than humans at almost all intellectual tasks, and we are going to collectively as a society grapple with it. AI is going to get better at what everyone does, including what I do, including what other CEOs do. He says 50% of jobs will be wiped out in the next 2 years by AI.
But not his.
He even says he could be replaced. CNN says it's all part of the AI hype machine. There will not be a... What do you think? Will there be a white-collar bloodbath?
Yeah. Hello.
There is a certain amount of hype, though, isn't there? I mean, Sam Altman is the king of this, overhyping what AI can do. But is AI going to replace that many jobs?
I don't think. I mean, yeah. So you can't trust what the CEOs of the companies say because it serves their purposes to make this thing seem disruptive. But like,
or even scary. We've always said some of this doomerism is them saying, "Oh my God, they're so good."
I know. It's a weird form of marketing, but it is a form of marketing. It's true. Yeah. But at the same time, Kevin Roose at the New York Times had a good piece that came out about the job apocalypse, and he made the good point that like labor figures are showing that new college graduates, employment rate is down.
It's like a terrible
6%.
time. Terrible time to be getting out of college.
And it's also a time when, so there's the general tightening of the belt in advance of the recession that everybody seems to be convinced we're going to go into. But there's just this sense from all these companies that they just don't think whole categories of jobs are going to be necessary. The Bank of Singapore just said that it's going to replace like thousands of people that would normally review loans and, be a clerk and all these different ways that they're all going to go away. And they were the first big bank to say it's specifically because of AI that we're going to get rid of all these people. That stuff, I think even if it proves that it's not able to replace people, I think these companies and these shareholders especially are so eager for that to be the case that we're going to experiment with that for a little while. And I think that's going to be a terrible thing for people in the job market.
Amodei said that within 5 years, AI could eliminate half of all, this is important, entry-level white-collar jobs, which means unemployment could spike to 10 to 20% within the next 5 years. Maybe that's true. There's a long-term consequence, though, if you lose entry-level jobs, because there's no way for somebody to get to a senior management position without going through the entry level.
This is what my friends that are senior software engineers bring up, because obviously, I think these people are typically the biggest AI proponents other than you, Leo, that I talk to on a day-to-day basis. They're like, yeah, love AI, love using it for my work. It's incredibly helpful. But the one qualm they bring up again and again is they're like, I don't know what this is going to do to the pipeline of people that come up to work with us. Like the sort of tasks that typically you'd have an intern or fellow or like really entry level, like junior engineer be doing and working on to kind of cut their teeth are suddenly being handed off to AI. And obviously that makes things a bit faster. In some ways it's cheaper, but I do wonder what the consequences to the pipeline is going to be.
Yeah.
I don't know, you hear from, Sam Altman was on, I have a piece on this, was talking about how there's evidently a text thread, like a WhatsApp group or Signal group or something, of all the big tech CEOs.
Right.
And supposedly he's got a bet going with a few of them as to when they're going to have the first $1 billion one-person company, and that they are kind of cheering the idea that you're not even going to need a hierarchy to have to move up through. That
the one-man unicorn. Yeah,
that's right. That one,
and it'll be a vibe coder to boot, because you can't write enough code by yourself. So you have to.
And I think that is the dumbest possible thing to be cheering for. I mean,
but I also think it's like so perfectly on the nose for how these guys think. Because notably,
if you're that one guy, though, that's good.
No. You're not even thinking, what's going to be the first company that with a single person creates $1 billion in like value for people? It's what's going to be the first $1 billion one-person company, which means what is going to be the first company, probably vibe coded by one guy, that ends up with $1 billion valuation because they've kind of talked investors into believing that one guy and his ChatGPT wrapper are worth them giving hundreds of millions of dollars of venture capital at a $1 billion valuation, which is not the same thing as creating $1 billion of actual value in the world.
That's a good point. Well, I'll give you an example. Here's a Indian AI startup, Builder.ai. It was a unicorn. They promised to use AI to create software. They raised over $500 million. Turned out that when you had their AI code something, it was sent back to the home office where 200 Indian engineers wrote the code. There was no AI.
That just seems inefficient.
At least they had jobs.
At least they were working.
Yeah,
they're creative. Builder AI is a job creator.
That was good. I don't know.
On May 21st, Builder AI announced it was entering bankruptcy, saying historic challenges and past decisions have placed significant strain on our financial position.
That's funny. I don't find myself as outraged by that one.
So to them, it was cheaper to actually hire people. Use the AI.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
I'm like, that seems
Were the customers unhappy? They got the code.
This is the conspiracy theory I have, which may be played out, may not, which is that we have all of these different fields that, like you just said, executives are like, well, why don't we give it a shot? We'll get rid of thousands of workers, replace it with AI, see how we can make it work. Maybe that makes financial sense right now when these companies, the frontier AI companies, are largely in their infancy and charging rates that don't allow them to actually make money. But I wonder if, let's say, even a world where like it very easily becomes a tool that can do the same jobs that you're eliminating, then they're going to jack up the prices, much like Uber and Lyft whenever they suddenly had to make money. And will that be viable for any of these companies then, if suddenly you're paying 1,000 times $1,000 a month to replace some of your employees? Perhaps it wouldn't be.
I'm going to take a break. When we come back, I think this might be the best named website ever. WalterWrights.ai. Walter White, of course, was the bad guy in Breaking Bad, but this is a different kind of bad guy. We will take a break and come back with Jacob Ward. Great to have you, Jacob Paris Martineau. Let's just tell Jeff that we moved.
Nobody home.
Tell Jeff that the podcast is located on the other side of a bridge. He can't come anymore.
Yeah, sorry,
Jeff.
I miss Jeff. We can't wait to get him back. But I love having you on, Jacob. I really,
Thanks, man.
Really appreciate all the content. Our show today brought to you by this little doohickey here. Let me show you. This is my. Let me push the right button. This is my Thinkst Canary. Look at that. It looks like I don't know, an external hard drive. It's about that size, about the size of my hand. Got 2 connections, power and Ethernet. Put this on the network, and it can be almost anything I want it to be, because you see, this Thinkst Canary is not what it looks like. It can be, mine is set up right now to be a Windows 2019 server. For a long time, it was a network-attached storage device. It can be pretty much anything. Let me log on to my Thinkst Canary, and I'll show you. This is, we call this one Attic because it's sitting in my attic. And I can make this thing be, let me show you. Well, yeah, as I said, it's a Windows 2019 Office file share, but let's just see what else it could be. It could be IIS. It could be SharePoint. It could be Windows 7, Windows 10. It could be a Linux database, a Linux proxy, a Mac OS 10 file share, and on, even a SCADA device. This thing is awesome. Right now, I'm going to turn it into let's say a Siemens Cymatic 300 PLC. Now, why would I want one of those in my studio? Well, because if somebody breaks into my system, if they get through my perimeter defenses and they start snooping around, they're going to see that Siemens Cymatic 300 PLC, and they're going to want to know what's it doing there and what can it do? What's it got? And they might even try to break into it. By the way, I could also use that Thinkst Canary to create what we call canary tokens. These are little files I can distribute around, even on my, I have some on my Google Drive. These tokens can look like anything, a PDF, a Word file, an Excel spreadsheet. They can even be things like tailscale config files. They can be a DNS host name that alerts when queried. It can be a credit card that alerts when somebody uses it. See, I could set this up as a little credit card. And if somebody gets this credit card and uses it, I'm going to get an alert. That's the whole point of the Thinkst Canary. Just the alerts that matter. The alerts that tell you somebody is inside your network. Somebody got that credit card. Somebody's accessing files on your Google Drive. And the alerts can come any way you want them. They can be text messages, email. They could be Slack. Of course, it supports syslog. There's an API that supports webhooks. The Thinkst Canary is genius! Created by a team of people who have spent years teaching governments and companies how to break into systems. They know exactly what bad guys are looking for. They designed this honeypot to be exactly what it says it's going to be, with the MAC address, with all of the details. When it was my Synology NAS, it had a Synology MAC address. It had the DSM-7 login. It looked exactly like the real thing. But the minute someone accesses, say, tries to brute force this fake internal SSH server or my NAS server, or somebody accesses that lure file I put out there, I'm going to get the alert that says there's somebody in your system. Choose a profile for your Thinkst Canary device, register it as I just did with the console for monitoring and notifications. Then you just sit back and you wait. Attackers who've breached your network can't help themselves. They don't look vulnerable, they look valuable. Malicious insiders snooping around, they're going to tell you. They're going to make themselves known by accessing your Thinkst Canary. I think every network needs these. A big bank might have hundreds of them spread all around. And in fact, if you go to canary.tools/love, you'll see some of the big companies and the CISOs that you know who use canaries and wouldn't do anything without a Thinkst Canary, who say, this is it. You can have all the perimeter defenses in the world, but on average, a company that gets breached doesn't know there's somebody inside their network for 91 days, 3 months. For an adversary to browse around, steal stuff, plant time bombs. You don't want them to do that. You need a Thinkst Canary. Go to canary.tools/twit. $7,500 a year will get you 5 of them. As I said, you might have hundreds, you might have a half dozen, you might have 1 or 2. But just as an example, 5 Thinkst Canaries, your own hosted console. You get upgrades, you get support, you get maintenance for that year. And, if you use the code TWIT in the How Did You Hear About Us box, you're going to get 10% off the price for life. Now, maybe after hearing all this, you're still a little skeptical. Well, I want to tell you, they understand. That's why they offer a 2-month money-back guarantee for a full refund, 60 days. Plenty of time for you to say, I don't know. I got to tell you, though, we've been doing these ads for Thinkst Canary for 8 years, and no one has yet ever asked for their money back. Not one. Not one. Because once you get this, you go, I needed this all along. You realize this is brilliant. You could do your own honeypots. Trust me, it's murder. It's hard. It takes some real sophistication. These things are done right. Canary.tools/twit. Don't forget the twit offer code so you get 10% off. Canary.tools/twit. Use the code TWIT. And don't forget, you got 60 days to change your mind. But you would be the first. And I think it'd be a mistake. Thank you, Thinkst Canary. We appreciate your support. It was only a matter of time. I've been reading sob stories from college professors who were saying, "Oh God, now instead of grading and reading essays, I spend most of my time figuring out if stuff was generated via AI." I think it's kind of a whack-a-mole because, well, here's Walter Wright's humanize AI text and bypass any AI detector with Walter Wright's AI. So I guess you subscribe to it. Trusted, by the way, you should read this, by 100,000 students and professionals to bypass AI detectors using Walter Wright's AI humanizer tool. It was just a matter of time. Humanize AI
I will
text.
say,
Take the M dashes out.
That's the thing I was about to say. I'm so annoyed that AI has made it more problematic to be using M dashes, because as a journalist, I feel like something a significant portion of journalists have is we can't quit M dashes and parentheticals. You got editors being like, "Do you need this?" And I'm like, "You can pry my M dashes from my cold, dead hands."
All right, I'm going to say to Perplexity,
you're
write me a
Jacob.
paragraph, love story in the style of Danielle Steele. How about that? And I'm going to see. In other words, I'm going to generate some AI garbage. I'm going to make it 300 words.
Yes, Anthony has the right answer here because most of the LLMs are trained by journalists, so there are M dashes in there. There's all the stuff that journalists use.
That's why the M dashes
not
are
regular
there.
people.
Oh,
In the golden
and all the
haze,
bullet points are probably because they were trained on Business Insider.
they've got the Axios style down. In the
They're making
golden
everything
haze
brief.
of a San Francisco evening, Alexandra stood on the balcony of her Pacific Heights apartment, the city lights twinkling below the scattered diamonds. She had always been fiercely independent, building her career as a renowned architect, of course, brick by determined brick. All right, let's see what
Also,
Walter Wrights does with that.
Danielle Steele should sue the bejesus out of, right? Like that's the thing. That's the whole basis of the lawsuit, right?
Don't you think, though, that she probably by now is
Yeah, right. Exactly. She didn't
using
care.
AI to...
The line that bothers me most on the marketing of that site is that it says that it's plagiarism free and undetectable, as if somehow the detection of plagiarism is the problem, not the plagiarism.
Well,
right?
now, let's be fair, Jacob. If you're using an AI to write something, that's not plagiarism, is it?
Yeah, I guess that's right. Although you're
I
plagiarizing
suppose what you're
stealing
doing
from
is
the AI,
you're plagiarizing the AI. Yeah, I'd argue that's
right.
plagiarism.
Can you plagiarize an AI, really?
You know what this
Yes.
reminds me of? I had a conversation with a professor at UC Berkeley who's writing did a class on how to read literature deeply, and they read like 3 books over the course of the semester, and they try to get deep inside them. And he says that the number one problem he has is convincing these kids who have just shown up. I think they're freshmen. That there is an intellectual difference between having read the book and having read ChatGPT's summary of the book, that they don't think there's any difference there. And then I was just talking to my wife.
So sad.
My wife just had a conversation with another academic yesterday who said that the problem he's having is that his students actually believe they have written the thing when they get ChatGPT to do it for them.
I wrote the prompt.
I wrote the prompt. And so they feel ownership of the product.
Oh, that's like saying, I made the IKEA sofa.
I put my dollar
Like
in.
saying, I
made
paid
this
my
Coca-Cola.
friend Billy $500 to write the final exam. That's my final exam for you.
My $500. I mean, hey,
Okay.
we're going to be fine, you guys. We're going to be fine.
I have to
great.
say, this
going
is
good.
not anything new because, okay, now, Jacob, you tell me, you never used Cliff Notes in your entire academic career.
Oh, I'm sure I used Cliff Notes.
I
No
think you might
question.
have.
Right. But I, at least I read them. And,
I read the Cliff Notes.
I read the Cliff Notes, like I didn't just say, Cliff Notes didn't write it for me.
Give
at
me the
time.
Cliff Notes
I don't
for James Joyce Ulysses.
know. Yeah, the comic book version of the classics. Sure, I read those, but I read them. I don't know.
It's a different world. I don't know. I'm glad I'm not a college professor. That's all I can say. Yeah. If you've been using Notebook, go ahead. please.
I was going to say, I was interviewing a college professor, I believe, teaching a course on tech ethics, and it was a partially online course. This was about a year ago, and as part of like one of the intro assignments for it, she just had like, because it was partially online, she's like, okay, everybody go in like the chat room forum, write a brief thing introducing yourself and like what you're excited to get out of the class. And in that first assignment, almost every single student used AI, which you could tell because their intro messages introducing themselves were word for word like the same message. And I'm like, if you cannot even write a 3-sentence introduction message in your tech ethics and humanities course, like what are we doing?
That is pretty funny.
Wait,
Cliff
was
Notes,
the prompt
I
longer
was
than
just
that?
checking.
Like-
You can still buy Cliff Notes, by the way, for everything. So they're not out of business. These are
Cliff Notes
they call
gotta
them
be shaking
study
its
guides.
boots.
No, come on.
man,
These are AI generated at this point, right? Come on.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so.
Oh, that's interesting.
I will say, I met someone a week or two ago who's a PhD in philosophy at NYU, and part of one of his like side gigs is he writes those, but for like philosophy related topics. And I was like, that job can't exist
There's
for
one
very
of the-
long,
That's not
right?
long.
There's one of the
Cool.
white collar jobs that's going to disappear.
Yeah, that's going away. That's going
By the way,
away.
at the bottom of the Cliff Notes webpage, chat PDF, homework and exam help, get instant solutions and study help. Yeah, you're right. AI has come to Cliff Notes even. Cliff Notes were too much work. That's the problem.
Yeah, too much. It took too long.
Took too long.
That's right.
So finish assignments faster with AI, get solutions, summarize documents, explain concepts in seconds. I have to think, if I were a student, I wouldn't resist this. I mean, if I had a professor's lecture notes, I would still do the work, but I would consider using these tools.
I mean, I also think that you got. So I had a conversation with a high school senior who's like a valedictorian, super smart kid, and he was saying, as ChatGPT was coming out, he said, he's like, Zoom during COVID was one of these things that taught a whole generation of kids that the only purpose of school is to get through it so you can have a house and a Tesla. You guys taught us that a degree is about like getting out there and making money, that it's transactional. And so why wouldn't we use any possible thing we can to get the better of that deal, basically? And I was like, kid, I can't argue with you.
I do think that that's ultimately like the core of it is what we've seen over the last couple of decades. And maybe this has just been the way it is always. Maybe it's foolish of me to ever think there was a world where college was thought of as something you did
Making
because
you a
the
better
intellectual pursuit is what you're going there for. But that's how I thought of college when I was there. So I was like, I obviously want to get a job out of this, but also what I am getting from this is the ability to critically think and to be exposed to new ideas. And I do think that gets lost in kind of like the neoliberalification, the commodification of college and degrees. But I think that's also probably a very rational output and effect of college degrees being as expensive as they are.
Totally.
I also think it starts earlier than that. Paul Graham, who is with founder of Y Combinator and a Lisp hacker, and I always like reading his stuff, wrote a great book called Hackers and Painters. And the first chapter talks about high school, and that every kid in high school pretty quickly gets, they're not there to learn. They're being housed so their parents can work during the day and they will be kept out of trouble. The teachers aren't there to teach. The students aren't there to learn. It is a form of, it's a prison, basically. And they learn it. Now, this is interesting because he wrote this 20 years ago. He wrote this before, not only AI, before social networks were really prominent, before Twitter. And he talks about why kids in high school are suicidal and depressed, why they're rebellious. He says, and it's nothing new. This has always been a problem as long as we've been housing teenagers. And he said, you don't in the Renaissance times when a kid at the age of 12 became an apprentice and was started to learn a skill, you don't read about these same kinds of anomie and ennui with the kids in the Renaissance because they were doing something, they were working. But in school, it's just this empty, meaningless exercise that everybody knows. He says the real problem is the emptiness of school life. We won't see solutions till adults realize that. The adults who may realize it first are the ones who are themselves nerds in school. This is the chapter is really about why nerds are unpopular. He says, because they're smart and they understand that being popular is not the goal of high school. Do you want your kids to be as unhappy in 8th grade as you were? I wouldn't. Well, then, is there anything we do to fix things? Almost certainly. There's nothing inevitable about the current system. It's come about mostly by default. Nerds in schools should not hold their breath. Maybe one day a heavily armed force of adults will show up in helicopters to rescue you, but they probably won't be coming this month. I think, in a way, reading this reminded me, kids were bored and depressed even before there was social media, even before there was AI. This is not anything new. This is what we've done with our education system.
I mean, in some ways, obviously the education system is an improvement from what we had previously, which was wide-scale child labor.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I don't think.
But at least
necessarily
a kid at the age of 15 who's laboring at something and making something is doing something of value.
That kid may not have any of their fingers, but they're doing something of value. Johnny may be working with only one lung, but he's going to survive to the ripe old age of 19 and father about 17 children, and that's beautiful.
He gets 2 smoke breaks a day, It's all
sometimes he goes through his 5 to 6 packs of cigarettes during those 2 smoke breaks, but he deserves it. He's a hard worker.
Yeah, but that's during the industrialization, though. I think he's talking about pre-industrialization when it was like apprentices working for their fathers, right?
Yeah.
Who was a painter. Now you're going to learn how to paint like your dad painted because that's just how it worked.
I mean, I think there was this moment when it was supposed to be, as Paris says, this quality. It was supposed to be to create a more informed, citizenry, that everyone was going to be a better, smarter citizen.
It was this great democratic ideal of free education.
Was all about that, but
hasn't really.
Well, college became a commercial enterprise. Is what happened.
I completely agree with you. The colleges at this point are for-profit institutions, and not really designed to deliver.
They pride themselves on how many people they turn away. How much of their endowment they don't spend.
So I guess my point is a smart kid today is probably not going to learn in school or even in college. But they have opportunities to learn on their own. It started with things like Khan Academy, but now with, NotebookLM, and there's a lot of tools out there that you could become really good at something on your own. I think AI can make excellent teachers.
Ostensibly, yes, but I do think that the reason, like the value that young people are getting from being forced to be in K through 12 education and being socially pressured to go through something like college is learning and developing critical thinking skills is not intrinsic for most people.
No, I agree.
It's an inherently uncomfortable process. Yeah. And
did you learn that from school, or did you learn that on your own?
I learned that from school, but I'm a dork. But I was always the sort of person
were the kids around you learning that?
Some. I went to high school and other school in Florida, so it was kind of grim. But there were some people who were actually. I know it's grim everywhere.
And there are handful. I got a lot out of school too.
The system is deeply broken and profoundly messed up doesn't mean that the idea of fostering a community of knowledge and some sort of large systemic force to push kids outside of their box, their own bubble, and introduce them to concepts they normally would not come across of their own volition is bunk. Like I think that's a worthwhile endeavor, and we shouldn't abandon that just because the reality is.
We shouldn't abandon it. We should fix it.
Yeah,
because I agree with you. Free education is a vital, important part.
Totally, and I worry that Khan Academy moves us in the opposite direction.
Really, you think so?
I just worry that it just will hew to the same thing that all these other tech products wind up producing, which is the effect of of saying, well, we don't need to spend the money on that because look, it can be done digitally. And even when it's not proven that that is the right outcome, people want to they have the shareholder perspective on it. I just think we got to get back to this idea that there's just some fundamental things that cost money and don't pencil out in the short term. And education's got to be one of those.
I also think, though, I mean, I look at my son who was not a great student, but he taught himself to cook from YouTube videos. And he's quite an accomplished cook now. He's a celebrity chef, in fact. I think there are a lot of kids.
Your son has a very unique experience with the world.
I think there are a lot of kids who learn things on YouTube. They watch. You can go to YouTube and learn how to do almost anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think we should abandon a public education because of that.
Yeah.
But I do think the opportunities for a smart kid, a kid like you, Paris, are much broader than just what they can learn in school.
Yeah. Certainly.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing.
The only part I worry about is rewarding kids who are more comfortable alone and rewarding them for.
I think that. But
I mean, especially. But I think it's also something that we need to keep in mind, especially given that we have a large amount of kind of coalescing political social crises that kind of all stem back to this loneliness epidemic. You both see it in men with masculinity. You see it with what you guys were just talking about in terms of whole generations of students that kind of came of age educationally in a completely isolated space where your main social interaction is entirely digital. Your main experience of school and interactions with authority figures is entirely through a screen in your bedroom. I do think that there is, I don't know, some version of that. Like we should be pushing more pro-social behaviors just as a society, because I think people end up.
I think everybody should do square dancing and join a skee ball club.
I do think that would solve a lot of America's issues.
No, it's funny because I was talking about this earlier today. I walk around my neighborhood, typical suburban neighborhood. When I was growing up, there were always kids in the street in the front yard playing. It's like the Twilight Zone. There's nobody around. It is dead quiet. Kids do not play outside anymore.
Also, Chat makes the very good point that this is a very American conversation as well. Like.
Oh, yeah.
No, of course.
In fact, Paul was saying that when we were having this conversation earlier today. He said, I see that in Canada. There's kids playing in the street all the time. What do we do wrong in America? Was it scaring people with stranger danger?
I do think that's a big part of it, because I am still in a lot of parenting groups, not because I'm a parent myself, but because of my previous beat on kids online safety. I joined all these different chat rooms and groups so I could just kind of get the pulse. And now I'm kind of addicted to just seeing but a thing I hear again and again from parents is like, even if you have a kid that wants to play outside now, there is this like strange social pressure from other adults that like they see a child out in the street and they start posting on Nextdoor. They start calling CPS. They call the local police. They're like, who is this child and who has abandoned them? And it's like, no, that child is playing hide and seek with their friends. Their house is 2 blocks away. But we've somehow, at least in these pockets of America, created this incredibly antisocial paranoid culture that I think is really hard to unwind. There are these groups that I've covered in my previous journalism that are kind of like, wait till all these different like parent movements to get kids, like off screens, have more of a return to a traditional outdoors childhood. And one of the problems they have come up across, or at least one of the chapters here in Brooklyn and New York, is like, they're like, we don't have places for the kids to go.
That's a
like
good point.
they had to like go and meet with coffee shops or like libraries or bookstores and be like, will you allow children to hang out, like teenagers to hang out here, maybe only buy one coffee or maybe not buy any books, but just socialize? And they had to be like, yes. And then they put up little stickers on their window.
Kids
like,
welcome.
Children, you can socialize here.
It's because you lost the mall, man. But you all lost the mall.
Yeah.
There's no mall
we
to
did
go
lose the
to.
mall.
So I think maybe that's something we as a society can address, and we can kind of foster that kind of thing. And I think that's probably something we should do. I know as an adult, Lisa and I go out and we do swing dancing. We take Tai Chi. We do stuff to get out in the world.
You're learning piano. Leo dropped in our group chat this week that he's a maestro on the keys.
No, I'm not. I'm a very early learner, but it's a great thing to do, and I think it's important to go out and be with people and socialize and go out and do things. But I don't think the society fosters that really. Maybe it does with you young people. I don't know.
I don't want to. This is going to sound like a weird prescription, but. The keeping separate of kids and booze is looked upon as really weird in other countries.
Jake's coming out in favor of getting the kids drunk. You have it first.
Here's the thing. We're not saying get the kids drunk, but what we're saying is that the parents should be able to drink socially with their kids around. Out in public. Yeah. This is a thing in the rest of the world.
In France, everybody's sitting around the table. You put a little water and wine in the glass. The kid can drink that.
Well, literally, I'm not saying that the kids should do it. I'm saying that
they should be exposed to it.
Parents
shouldn't be separated.
Should be allowed to drink a little bit. And
I was talking about this the other day. We have a lovely French restaurant.
Pub culture allows your kids to come in.
I was at a French restaurant, lovely, wonderful kind of bistro place. Family, they were having a birthday party or something, a bunch of adults, there were 3 or 4 kids. None of the kids were listening to what the adults were saying. They were either on a screen or the kids weren't part of the group. How are you going to learn how to have a conversation if you aren't in a group? Anyway, we got to take a break. We got to take a little break. We're getting way behind. I only have 5 minutes left in this 2-hour show. And we have 400 stories still to do. Jacob Ward is here. It's great to have him from the ripcurrent.com. Paris Martineau looking for work. She's such a talented investigative journalist.
Listen, I'm out there. I'm doing stuff. Listen, if you want to hire me, that's also interesting. But if you've got an interesting story of
you could freelance
corporate fraud. Oh yes, I'm working on.
Oh, good.
But if you have an interesting story of corporate fraud, or honestly just an interesting story in general, be it tech related or otherwise, hit me up. My signal's Martineau.01.
I'm a big proponent of going your own way, of not working for the man, or in your case, the woman, but doing being an independent freelancer. Go for it. This is a good opportunity for you.
I mean, I think it's just very interesting to be able to suddenly write about anything for anyone.
Yeah. You're free at last.
I'm quite excited about it.
Free at last.
Free and lanced, as they say.
Free and lanced. Our show today brought to you by Storyblok. If you have worked anywhere, a publication, as a marketer, anywhere with a website, really, the pain of legacy content management systems. We've all been subjected to them. They promise enterprise-grade features, but they deliver slow, clunky systems that need dev support even for the smallest little update. And of course, if you're trying to move fast, and who isn't, that's a nightmare. Well, Storyblok changes that. I love this. Unlike those monolithic CMSs, Storyblok does something that I am a big believer in. It's called headless. It's headless. It completely decouples your back end from your front end. That means you've got a robust, solid front end with a strong API and a great content management system, and by the way, a great editor built in. But the front end can be whatever you want. Developers can build in any framework: React, Astro, Vue. Marketers get that intuitive visual editor to create and update content. No dev tickets. You want to move that image over 3 pixels? You go ahead and do it. Storyblok scales, whether you're a freelancer or part of a global enterprise. They have a global CDN, AWS data centers in the US, Europe, and Asia. It's built for performance at scale. And man, is Storyblok enterprise ready. It's got all the features enterprise requires: role-based access control, enterprise SLAs, of course, top-tier security, the things Fortune 500s demand. One global e-commerce giant switched to Storyblok and cut content update cycles from weeks to hours. Another major brand empowered marketing to launch campaigns independently. Yeah, you can do it, freeing up the devs for bigger projects. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. Storyblok. Content loads fast anywhere in the world, better UX, higher engagement, improved SEO, and with that beautiful real-time visual editor, Marketers see exactly what their content will look like before publishing, and no more endless back and forth over minor tweaks. Storyblok has an API-first approach. That means your devs get fewer interruptions, marketers get more autonomy, everybody's happy. If you're an agency, oh, you'll love it. Storyblok offers multi-client workspaces, flexible permissions, and seamless collaboration tools. You can manage multiple projects without disrupting development workflows. So whether you're a startup, an enterprise, or an agency juggling multiple clients, Storyblok gives you the power and flexibility you need. Try it today. Storyblok.com/TwitTV-25 and use that code TWIT25. Twit listeners get 20% off for 3 months on the Growth or Growth Plus plans. That's Storyblok.com/TwitTV-25. The offer code TWIT25 for 20% off the first 3 months on Growth and Growth Plus plans. STORYBLOK.com/TWITTV-25 and the offer code is TWIT25. Thank you, Storyblok. Thank you. Did we
Jake
lose
has been consumed by the Zoom gods.
Yeah,
is he texting you?
He got disconnected. I don't know what happened. It might be power. It might be internet. I don't know.
He's not on the horn. Well, we'll
continue. I've got a silly story for us. Line 111. There's a lot of stuff in the.
There are so many silly stories here, actually.
It's in the AI Gone Wild section. This is a advice column submission from Slate's Dear Prudence.
Oh, I love Dear Prudence.
Help! My husband's best man made a stunning admission during his wedding speech. I might never get over it. So
why does he have the ChatGPT Catanus on his head?
Who's to say? Dear Prudence, my partner of 5 years and I just got married after 2 years of extensive wedding planning and preparation. We had a very large guest list, all this stuff. Your husband was very intentional about making sure the labor of the wedding planning was split as equally. We agreed that we wanted to write our own vows because we thought that it would be more meaningful than using traditional ones. As a self-admitted perfectionist and English major, I spent an immense amount of time on mine. I was really looking forward to hearing what he wrote, this person writes. The ceremony things without a hitch. The vows he wrote were beautiful and made me tear up. During the reception, however, his best man gave a, I believe, slightly drunk toast where he mentioned my husband using ChatGPT to write his vows. Everyone laughed, including me, until he emphasized that it wasn't a joke and that my husband actually did use ChatGPT to write them at the last minute, apparently to emphasize how lucky he was to find a wife like me. My husband was laughing nervously, and I was taken aback. As soon as the toasts were over, I ran to the restroom and cried, feeling extremely hurt that not only did he use AI to write something so intimate, but mostly that he presumably would not have told me had this not been revealed during the toast. He followed me to the bathroom and apologized. Basically, it goes through that this person's whole wedding night was ruined because she realized that not only did her husband use ChatGPT to write the vows, but he lied about it, and everybody else was planning on lying it too. I don't know. I think it's somewhat
From the moment our paths crossed, you've brought light and laughter into my life in ways I never imagined possible. Today, standing here with you, I feel the depth of my love for you more than ever. I vow to always cherish your heart, to listen with patience and speak with kindness. I promise to celebrate your victories and lift you up in your moments of doubt. I will honor your dreams and respect our differences, knowing that together we are stronger. I think that's a pretty good wedding vow.
Listen, I'm sure that they were great. I just do think it's a little skeevy to write your wedding vows using ChatGPT and not tell your wife.
You are my home, my adventure, and my peace. I love you more deeply than words can express, and I promise to spend the rest of my days showing you just how much. This is good. It's good stuff.
You're gonna you could renew your vows with this.
I don't think we made up our wedding vows, actually. I think the preacher made them up. Which is worse, having the preacher make it up or an AI? Jacob Ward has returned. He is now on his cell phone, I think.
Yeah, dude.
You're doing the real Jeff Jarvis lifestyle, which is there was once that Jeff's internet went out and we had to wait like an hour. Then he did a podcast from outside. It was a nightmare.
Oh, that's right, because he had a big old power outage, didn't he?
What's going on.
Yeah, and it's strange.
I'm having some kind of internet outage in my neighborhood.
I'm seeing him.
That's really terrible.
But his camera's not coming into the e-camera.
I see it.
I see it too, but it's not coming.
Is the audio coming in? Chat.
The audio is coming in. The audio is coming in.
No, but I see him. He's on.
I hear you
Zoom.
guys just fine. Yeah,
I mean,
the trouble.
he's
I don't
on
know what's
the
going on,
Zoom.
but my whole system has gone down. I don't know if it's a neighborhood thing or what's happening. Anyway, I'm going to try and come back in, but if not, you guys, this has been a real pleasure.
Jacob, where do you live? So I know. Are you in the Bay Area or?
I am. I'm in the Bay Area, so it's the capital of technology. So what the heck, But
I blame
so often it just fails us.
Comcast drops out a lot. I find we actually have Starlink on the roof just in case, and we've had to flip over to it. Jacob, it was so nice to have you on. TheRipCurrent.com. If your internet comes back, call us back. Okay.
Parallel to the shore.
All right,
everybody.
I will. Thanks, guys. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Jacob. Take care.
All right,
Jacob Ward, everybody. He missed that whole wedding vow thing, though.
I was going to say, he must have come in very confused.
Paris.
He's been like, wow, they're finally doing it. They're
I
getting
vow
married.
to always cherish your heart, to listen with patience and speak with kindness. I think these are as good as anything I would write.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's ultimately not a big deal. I think the thing about this that I would argue the advice replier on this, the advice giver messed up with, she basically said like, oh, you're overreacting, not a big deal. Everybody uses ChatGPT for this stuff. He's maybe not a good writer. And I'm like, that's not the problem. The problem is he lied to you about it.
Well, yeah, because
where you guys both said we're going to write these by ourselves.
That's, well, you're married. That's what you do. You preserve the romance.
Yeah, but like maybe you shouldn't start it off moment one of the marriage. Maybe you should wait like a couple weeks.
You could have been
left and right.
It could have been a very big bonding moment with, honey, I just have to tell you something before we get up there. Is I'm a terrible writer and I asked for some help, and I think the vows are really meaningful. Have you ever bought? Wait a minute. Have you ever bought a greeting card with a pre-written message?
I have, yes.
How is this different?
Well, because when you give someone the greeting card, they know that you didn't write it because it's printed.
And you should go, I mean this, signed Paris.
I actually wrote this. I got them to print it.
I made them print it.
There's also this weird thing, though, that people have that... Like I would rather like my best friend give me a poorly written speech written by him than
that's the thing. It's like I want to hear
that's really healthy. It's really heartfelt. Yeah.
Actual...
But some people can't get their words out in any heartfelt way, Look who just came back. Jacob's coming back.
Yeah, I'm back. How about that?
He's
I don't know
back.
what happened.
The internet came back.
Yeah, it came back. I don't know why.
So I'm going to make a confession. Mm-hmm. We're sitting around the table with my in-laws, and I used ChatGPT to make a picture of us sitting around the table. While we're at the lunch, I found an application that I could send that picture to, and I had the AI in the application write a heartfelt message from Lisa to her parents, and I mailed it. And
wait, so you printed it out and then mailed
this
it?
company does the whole thing. You just
so it's like frames.
So I'm doing it on my phone while we're at lunch, and I pressed send, and it was really good. And last week, Lisa said, "Can I ask you something?" My mother was so grateful. She was so touched, so moved by this card she got.
What a sentiment.
And did she just have to play it off as if she wrote it? You didn't tell her you were sending this?
Lisa's good. I don't think she said, "Oh, Mom, I don't know anything about that." I think she played along, but she did ask me when she got home.
He's so thoughtful, I know.
Well, yeah, it was such BS. It was so untrue, but it made her mom feel good, and that's what really matters. I hope she doesn't listen to this show.
Lisa's mom, please don't listen.
I should have brought this up actually when Daniel was here. More than half of the top 100 mental health TikToks contain misinformation.
That's
dubious
not surprising
advice,
to me.
questionable supplements, and quick fix healing methods. But of course it's not surprising. But this is the point, is people are going to TikTok to get their mental health advice. Probably better
People
to
are
go
going
to
to
an AI.
TikTok to have somebody tell you that everyone who's ever done you wrong is gaslighting you and that you're actually the smartest person in the world and that all of your opinions are valid.
It does tell me that.
It does, and
I
it's right
believe it.
for you. Everybody else it's wrong for.
Yeah,
But for
exactly.
you, it's right.
You're the special one.
The stripper
you're the
likes
one that
you.
it actually
the stripper
applied
really
to.
likes you.
The stripper really likes you, and it's really
Stripper
going to
loves
work
me.
out.
Don't say that. She loves me. She said she
I think you should have ChatGPT write your vows for her. I think she'd really appreciate that.
Honey, when I saw your tassels on stage. Let's see. Let's quickly change the subject. Oh boy, there's so many good ones, and we don't have a whole lot of time left. Oh, they're making a movie out of the
They are.
OpenAI board drama. No, out of the
of
OpenAI
course.
board
Wait,
drama.
which one? From which book? Karen Howe's book?
Oh, that's a good question. That I don't know.
Because that is the reason why. The reason why people are writing
Yeah,
all
that's
the
right.
books that are coming out right now are because publishers are interested. in
Who
wanting
would
to
you
give them
cast
money.
as Sam Altman? Are you ready?
Again, I'm not the person to do this because I know no actors.
Jesse Eisenberg. Jesse Eisenberg.
Yeah,
no,
that's
that was
better
my
than
first
that.
thought too, but you can't do him too. You can't do him again.
Better than that. Yeah, that's right. Wasn't he Mark Zuckerberg?
Yeah, he was
Zach Braff.
Zuckerberg.
Nope, better than that. This guy here, Andrew Garfield.
Oh, I was just going to say Andrew Garfield. That is a good call.
Spider-Man.
That's a
Perfect
good call.
Sam Altman.
That's a good call.
Yep.
nice.
The movie will be, let's see, I'm going to zoom out and tell you some more about this.
Let's see. I need to see what book it's based on. though.
Luca Guadagnino is in talks to direct Artificial, a dramatization of Sam Altman's dramatic firing and rehiring at OpenAI in 2023. Oh, get this. It's an Amazon film.
I'm curious
Monica
why
Barbaro.
now.
Oh, and of course, the Oscar-winning Yura Borisov from Honora will be the lead roles. He'll be playing probably Suitsgiver, right?
Simon Rich wrote the script.
What's it from, though?
That's a great question. Maybe it's
Yeah.
just a script unrelated to a book because I don't.
And
think
this
he's
is
written a book.
this is different
He's an
than
Ameri-
this is different than the play. Wasn't there there's a Doomers
There was a play in
San Francisco.
Brooklyn, or maybe it was in San Francisco too. There was a play about this that every review I heard of it made it sound inscrutable to the average person, but like it was perfectly targeted
this is the thing.
at tech reporters that spent every waking minute thinking about that story.
I saw a play and I loved it in New York, but Jeff found all the bad reviews and really dissed it. But it
Such is
was
his nature.
I saw that link and said it was so good. It was about a Nobel Prize winning novelist who it turns out used AI to write the novel. And it starred Robert Downey Jr.
Okay.
It's called McNeil. I really liked it. I think it sank without a trace. Here is the actress Monica Barbaro, who plays Mina Murati.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, she looks kind of like Mina Murati. So we got Garfield, we got Barbaro. Let me see who else I can
Did I ever
find.
tell you that I interviewed Mira Murati before OpenAI? Like there was
No.
a time right before the pandemic hit, like it was like a week or two before stuff started bubbling over in New York, where I got a last minute invite to be Diane von Furstenberg does this like women in charge festival event like thing that's like women interviewing women for like some audience of like some powerful women. And I was asked to interview this AI founder about AI, like last minute, went there. The real boon of it for me is because the pandemic happened right after, they couldn't send a courier to get my DVF very expensive dress back, so I got to keep it. But as part of it,
You got a DVF dress for
I
doing
did
it?
for free from doing it, and they can't be taking that back because that was 5 years
No.
ago. That's mine now. But I was interviewing her, and I wrote my questions as one does, but I go there and they hand me a card. They're like, "Oh, since we asked you last minute, we just wrote some questions for you," and they were all stuff like,
so helpful.
"What it like to be woman in AI? Is it hard to be girl but tech? Femininity, masculinity, technology?" And so I was like, "We can't."
What's
do
your
this.
favorite fit for a board meeting?
And I was like, "We can't do this." And I was like, asked about like I don't know, bias and like AI training stuff that was on the theme, but not.
Good for you.
And then listen, respect the hell out of Diane von Furstenberg. Really cool person, really smart thinker. Clearly,
My
she had some
nephew
sort of
dated her
input.
daughter.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. And Barry
As
Diller.
I'm going through the questions, Diane stands up in the audience, raises her hand. She's like, "I've just got to ask, what's it like to be a woman in
Jesus.
tech?"
It turns out they were her questions.
I wrote those questions, and I really wanted you to use them.
She answered them. She did quite good. Mira was
for
very
Mira.
nervous though, and
Was she smart?
And I was like, yeah, incredibly. I was like, listen, you got this. None of them are going to be hard.
You'll be all right.
It's a kind of interesting story. It's going to be a great movie because, of course, she was the CEO, interim CEO, who took over from Sam Altman when his board fired him for 5 days. But what we didn't know at the time, but we have learned from Karen Howe's book, is she was actually one of the instrumental people in getting him fired. That Ilya Sutskever and Mira Murati teamed up, and most of the Slack messages that Sutskever showed the board were Mira Murati's Slack, things that Sam Altman had said to Mira Murati. And of course, Murati left and started her own AI startup and has already raised a huge amount of money for it because she's Mina Murati.
Of course.
Here's good news and bad news for podcasters. Watch out, Jacob. We're in trouble.
I know.
Google's NotebookLM now lets you share your notebook and AI podcasts publicly. Get ready for an onslaught of NotebookLM podcasts, right?
This has totally been the
God.
thing standing between us and being just
Fame and
washed
fortune?
away. Well, no. It's been like there's been at least a little tiny touch of barrier to entry, and
Not
now
anymore.
all that's going away.
So
between that and all the TikTokers who are, crunching out 100 pieces of content a day because now you can, right? Those of us who insist on voicing our own stuff. That's it for us.
We will have the creators of NotebookLM, the Google guys, on the show. We've had them on before. We'll have them on again. They're friends of Jeff's in the coming weeks. I don't see a date yet, but that's coming up. NotebookLM actually is really cool. I don't know if you've used it. That's the one where you upload all your content and you say, make me a podcast out of that. That's not the only thing you can do. Actually, it's a very useful tool if you have, I would think for researching a story, for instance, upload all this stuff and then have it be able to ask questions of it about the story. Seems like that would be pretty useful.
I'm curious though, do people actually listen to any of these NotebookLM podcasts? Like, is there anybody who actually does this? Like, I do this.
I've never finished
I want to listen to it. That's what
I know people who,
I'm asking.
I know people who use it as a research thing. I don't think people use them as entertainment yet, but
you know who does? Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, in an interview, was it with Vanity Fair? I think it was. He said, I listen to podcasts. And then he admitted, well, I don't actually listen to podcasts. I feed podcasts into Copilot. And then when I'm driving to work, I have Copilot summarize them and I can ask questions.
I look through a series of mirrors that are reflected through a pool of water, and then a man interprets them in front of me. That's reflected through 3 mirrors, and then I watch that, and that's how I consume
I have
art.
listened to your show many, many times.
yeah, I'm a long-time listener.
I'm going to give you some ammunition, Paris, because I'm a generous person.
Wow.
AI hallucination cases database. This is a database that tracks legal decisions. You know that lawyers continue to use AI generated pleadings. These are the database. This database is legal decisions where generative AI produced hallucinated content, typically fake citations, that were then submitted to the court. 138 so far.
Wow. Yeah, lawyers
Fabricated
can't
citations.
stop using it.
They cannot stop.
I mean, even in the FDA and I think HHS had recently released like
that was a
guidance
formatting
documents
issue.
that had
that was a
bunch
formatting
of,
issue. Yeah. Uh-huh. That's
come on,
Robert
guys.
F. Kennedy Jr. in his quest to produce a document that made sense had an AI apparently write it, and it had all sorts of phony studies and all sorts of things. You'll like this database because one of the columns is what was the court's reaction to the fake pleading.
Right. That is the big one.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
Yeah.
Do they go for it or not?
There were sanctions occasionally. In one case, this was in Israel, AI use was noted by the lower court, but no specific action was taken. Most of them, though, warnings, right? Most of them.
My former colleague Gabby Delvay, who's now at The Verge, wrote a good piece on this, kind of like summarizing a lot of these things. And I don't know, she's had so many interesting details in this. Like there was one attorney who was sanctioned in 2023 for using it like this, but he said that he thought ChatGPT was a, quote, super search engine. And It took filing with fake citations to reveal that it's more not that.
Right. Today in the Washington Post, Jeffrey Fowler took 5 AI bots and gave them tests to see who was the smartest. And actually, it was an interesting way to do this. They gave a novel to the AI, a novel called The Jackal's Mistress, and asked the AI to answer questions about the novel. Okay. The judge was the author of the novel. Which is probably a pretty good judge of. He actually got a permission from the Authors Guild, who is suing AI right now about all of this to do this. And he said ChatGPT did probably all the bots did poorly in literature, but ChatGPT probably did the best. Only Claude got all the facts right about the book. Gemini, which wrote very short responses to our questions, was most often guilty of what the author called inaccurate, misleading, and sloppy reading. In one summary, Gemini described a man who had just had a leg amputated, it's a Civil War novel, appearing on another character's doorstep. Leaning, I guess. I don't know. He did say, and I thought this was interesting, that they asked the AIs to describe how the book's epilogue, quote, made them feel. And the author said both ChatGPT and Claude appeared to have, quote, all the feels. Their responses express precisely what I was trying to convey. In law, Claude was the best. They used a corporate lawyer and they gave 2 common legal contracts to ChatGPT and asked a lawyer to judge the response. Claude won overall by offering the most consistently decent answers to our questions. It did its best work on our most complex request, suggesting changes to our test rental agreement. The lawyer said that Claude's answer was complete, picked up on nuance, and laid things out exactly as he would. He said, in this case, it would be a good substitute for a lawyer. Health science, Claude was the best. What was interesting is that every one of these AIs hallucinated except for Claude. Not one hallucination in any of the 5 tests.
All right, go off.
Look, I gave you one. Now it's my turn.
That's great.
We go back and forth.
No. Go off, to be clear, in the kids' parlance means like, good job. You got it.
Oh, I thought it was like you were saying go off.
Yeah, I realized. No, it's like go off, king. Like you're
go
you're
off,
speaking.
king. If you'd said king, I would have understood. I put the fries in the bag. I'm just saying. Jacob, we're going to let you go. Thank you so much. Do you have a Brazil story before you go?
Well, I was just going to say one thing that I thought you guys would be interested in is I just came back from a trip to Brazil, and it was so interesting because
was it for work or pleasure?
Well, my wife got to go for work. I went for pleasure. I met her there, and we got to spend a week together in Rio.
Oh,
and as is always true on every vacation, I can't help but offer up my like nerdy dystopian observations in any place and ruin the vibe. And in this case, what was fascinating about Brazil, and this takes us all the way back to our conversation about Palantir, is how much Chinese surveillance technology is in that country.
Yeah.
Right? They've got this deep relationship with the BRICS nations, right? Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. And China has been exporting their safe cities, like surveillance programs to all these different capital cities, Quito, Ecuador, Karachi, Pakistan, all these places. Rio has tons of that. And so when you're walking around in the tourist areas, it's just cameras everywhere. And the combination of that and a lot of military police sort of floating around, people locally say it's actually much safer than it used to be. And it's so interesting to be in, but it's not, that's not helping people in the favelas. It's not helping people in the rural areas necessarily, but there is this bargain being struck there between doing away with privacy and using technology for surveillance that I just thought was so interesting. And I just think any listener of this show, or, and you guys especially, like, if you ever get a chance to go to that country and just see this like alternative universe of it's a democracy, and they also had a president who tried to inspire a kind of
Bolsonaro, yeah.
Yeah, Bolsonaro. He's now on trial for that. There's a really robust misinformation problem, but there's also a really robust journalism world there. And then this world of Chinese surveillance everywhere. It's literally like going to an alternative timeline. It is really cool and interesting. So anyway, highly recommend.
I'm jealous. Did you go to Ipanema?
Oh, yeah,
Walk
man.
down the beach?
We did the whole thing. We did the beach. We went to a soccer game, which was a crazy experience. Oh, man. We got to see one neighborhood against another neighborhood. It was like watching watching Yankees Red Sox. It was crazy.
I bet that was crazy.
You're like, yeah, cool. And you think it's like a national championship, and it's literally like this neighborhood versus the other neighborhood. Yeah, crazy. So anyway, highly recommend.
Thank you, Jacob Warb, theripcurrent.com. I really appreciate it. It's always great to talk to you. Come back soon.
Sure will. Thanks, you guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Jacob.
All right. See ya.
I didn't realize you had just been on his podcast. That's hysterical. All right. I got one
I went on his podcast, I think the week after he was last on our podcast, but it was recently released. It was delightful.
I just love Jacob. I
love Jacob.
Yeah,
I love his fun background that he has.
Yeah.
It's great.
Story from the Wall Street Journal that I'm not sure, but it might have something to do with one of our club members. Let me see. Let me pull this up here.
The Wall Street Journal.
Wall Street Journal. There we go. Morgan Stanley, you've heard of them, finance giant. They built one of their own AI tools because they had a lot of old legacy code, 9 million lines of legacy code to be exact. Launched their own DevGen.ai, an AI tool built on the GPT models, to translate the code into modern languages. They say it was a success. It saved developers an estimated 280,000 hours. The tool translates code into English specs, enabling any developer to rewrite it in a modern language. So it didn't write the code exactly. Darren, did you have anything to do with that? I think Darren works at Morgan in AI. So I'm just wondering if he had anything to do.
So we assume that you have to be responsible for everything we read. Oh,
Isn't Morgan Stanley JP? Isn't that related? No, JP
he left
Morgan's
Morgan
Chase.
in the
Looks
U.S.
like he left
15 years ago.
Oh, you left 15 years ago. Well, wouldn't you like to be there now?
Yeah, they're doing your favorite thing, Darren. See, this is the reason why you listeners need to get in Club Twit, because then you can have Leo be spreading misinformation about your job.
I remember him telling stories
part of the
about
podcast.
Morgan Stanley. I just assumed they were current. I didn't know they were really old. So probably what they were doing is taking your old code, Darren, and rewriting it in a modern language. That's what was going on. It's interesting.
They were like, we got to update this stuff.
This is an example anyway of not exactly vibe coding, but the value of AI in analyzing code bases. And, I'm not surprised by this because it's a computer. It's talking to another. It's like, of course, a computer can understand computer code. That makes sense to me. Anyway.
It's interesting. I mean, they say in the article, when it comes to full translation, the technology still has some room to mature, which is, of course, true. Like, it can technically rewrite code from an old language like Perl in a new one like Python, but it wouldn't necessarily know how to write it as efficient code that takes advantage of all of Python's capabilities. And that's one big reason humans are staying in the loop, the guy from Morgan Stanley said. Which, I mean, I'm sure eventually...
That's intelligent.
Maybe they'll get... Yeah, that is
No,
intelligent.
that's intelligent. Keep humans in the loop. I think you're You're always going to have to do that. We are going to do a little vibe coding session on a Friday. I think Darren will join us. What are you going to make? I don't know. I've been trying to decide. One of the things I've been doing with Claude Code, which is my current favorite tool, that one of Harper Reed's recommendations, is solve the advent of code problems from last year that I got stuck on. And so far,
but isn't the part of participating in advent of code to have a sense of pride in your
no, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it was more to see if it could do it than because that's how I'd want to do it. Although Darren, who is very good at this, we have a number of people in our club who take this coding challenge every December. It's an advent calendar, a different puzzle every day.
Cute.
We all do it together. It's fun. But Darren said a couple of days ago, I think, this is going to take all the fun out of it because everybody's going to be able to solve them with AI instantly. Yeah,
and isn't part of this whole thing like you've got a leaderboard of how fast people do?
Exactly.
I remember you guys showing me this.
It was already problematic this year because
fun.
There was somebody using AI who solved it in seconds, and it's like, well, that you got to take that off the top. I think they'll probably solve this by having an AI division and a human division, or like a vibe coding division and a hand coding division. Here's my attitude towards that. There will always be people who do woodworking because they enjoy the process. Doesn't mean your furniture is going to be made by a little old man in North Carolina.
Because you want your cheap furniture to be shipped to your house in 2 days
from China. Of course you
do. For $25.
Right. So, but there will always be people who will like to do that, and I will be the kind of person who will hand code. There's no point in using a chatbot to do it. Anyway, we're going to play with it. I hope we get some interesting things.
I like to imagine you out there with a chisel and a little hammer coding your little heart out.
You know what? You say that, and I know you're mocking me. It's okay.
I'm not mocking.
Yes, I know. But
razzing is my love language.
It's exactly how I do it. To me, it's like woodwork. It's like I'm building a little.
No, I mean, I think that I mean that earnestly. Like,
no, it's
I do
really
think
true.
that, like,
there is something. We were talking before at the beginning of the show about Reddit and how they analyze the "Am I the a-hole" Reddit subreddit. Reddit has sued Anthropic because they say Anthropic accessed their site more than 100,000 times after saying it had stopped. Because you see, Reddit has a deal with the competitors with OpenAI.
You can't be having Anthropic do that. That's not fair at all. And Reddit has its own kind of internal. Do you know what Reddit's internal chatbot is powered by? Is it an OpenAI?
Oh, that's a good question. I do not know.
For anyone who doesn't know, on Reddit now you can, I think on both the app as well as the website, instead of going to your various subreddits or using the search bar, you can basically search into a little chatbot window about your question, and then it gives you responses, I guess, powered by Reddit queries that then have little links out. I found it not particularly useful because when I'm looking for something on Reddit, I usually actually want to read real people's responses, not just Reddit's summary. But occasionally,
one of the reasons this exists is because Google. It's been long held that the best way to get an answer from Google is to type site:reddit.com.
Yeah, that is true.
So I'm going to ask it. This is Reddit Answers. What's the best AI for writing wedding vows? Let's see if it knows.
I mean, that's an interesting query because I feel like probably what this is useful is I like the extent of all these.
Oh, there's an actual
of course.
WedSpeech.ai.
Of course.
Oh my God. And somebody says, it didn't just throw out cheesy one-liners. It asked real questions about how I knew him, what kind of tone I wanted, what stories I might include.
Okay, it's directed. That one looks like it's directed. So it's not like you're putting
Yeah, that does. I mean, that's part of the issue is since Reddit has become a go-to place that people actually search out for product recommendations, of course there's astroturfing going on. And this is also one of the reasons that I believe a new announcement that I have somewhere in the rundown from Reddit this week is that they're now going to allow profiles the ability to turn off. Normally, if say you've got someone, you see that comment come up being like, actually, this wedding site is perfect and good and wonderful and you should use it. I'm a real person. You could go click their profile,
see if
go read all of their comments
and
see if maybe the only thing they've ever commented about is how this wedding site is really good and you should use it. But now Reddit has a feature where you can turn turn off history on your
can hide
profile,
it.
which will make it really hard to tell when someone's
that's unfortunate.
astroturfing or just karma farming. I think it's
Wait a minute, what's karma farming and astroturfing? Oh, good. Okay.
That's
learn the
a
lingo
show
of the
title for you.
kids.
So karma farming is whenever you'll see, it'll often be with like reposting. You'll see someone will post something on like mildly interesting about like let's say like a safe they found buried in their ground, which is huge Reddit bait. And then everybody upvotes it because they want to see what's inside the safe. The person never responds. And someone reverse image searches that safe photo and they're like, oh, somebody posted this on Reddit like 4 years ago and actually it was their safe and here's what happened with it. This person's just taking that post in order to get the Reddit karma, the upvotes, so they have a higher value Reddit account.
Can I just say that was an oddly specific anecdote, Paris? Do you have any experience with anything like that?
I realized recently I am a compulsive Reddit user, and it's deeply embarrassing for me.
It's my social network.
Okay, so now they have the little awards on your profile. Which I don't
I don't want. Do you want some gold?
But
I'll give you some gold.
Listen, I would like gold because I think that's fun. But I got an award the other day that was like 365 days. No, like the internal Reddit achievements. That was like, you've logged into Reddit. You've opened the Reddit app
that's
365 days in a row. And I was like, I don't want to know this, Reddit. Don't tell me that.
Do you have a custom Reddit avatar?
Only for my work account. I don't entirely believe in personalizing a Reddit account if I want it to be anonymous.
That's a good point. And then, by the way, they're expensive. $10?
Oh yeah, this is their whole NFT sort of thing.
I'm not.
You can do the
that.
non-custom. You can just do
one.
like a little Avi like that.
I do have. I do. That's me right there. You see that? That's the one I created.
You.
I'm not sure why I'm carrying a cleaning bottle.
Why are you wearing a Tanuki hat?
I don't know. I just made it a long time ago.
You're carrying.
Hey, where do you see your awards? Where would I see? Oh, here it is. My achievements. Let's see what I got.
It'll tell you things about yourself.
I'm a banana aficionado.
You're a banana baby.
I've been all the bananas. What does that mean?
That's the amount of scrolling you do.
Oh, I'm a big time banana. Cool comment. Okay, I've made a cool comment. I'm a hometown hero.
Oh, you've got a 5-day streak. How cute.
What was yours?
I'll look it up. It's going to be something grim.
I am an elder. Sure. I'm an elder. That's good.
That's true. They are accurate in that.
Please. 3 years anywhere is impressive.
391-day streak.
Oh, you got me beat.
Okay, it's just because this is even sadder actually. Whenever I'm going to sleep at night, I'll like scroll through some subreddits to bore me to go to sleep. And it's just a very relaxing nighttime habit that I have.
See, I only follow interesting subreddits. What's
that's
a boring
the thing is like
subreddit?
They're interesting, but then like the more you get into it, the more your mind kind of glazes over. Like I really enjoy GME Meltdown, which is a subreddit chronicling all of the meme stock baggies. Baggies
GameSpot.
In this case is the term used for people who are continuing to hold the bag for GameStop, Bed Bath & Beyond, AMC, other things like that. But it chronicles all the different kind of characters in this universe, and it's absurdly detailed and ultimately meaningless, but it's the perfect thing to kind of glaze your eyes over as you fall into a deep, dark, and dreamless slumber.
By the way, this wedspeech.ai is real. They have written 1,794 successful wedding speeches, not just vows, but speeches. You can create a speech. This is good, actually. That's the worst thing, to be a best man and have to write the speech. This would be good. I wonder if
I had to do that.
Oh man, $15. What for an 800-word speech?
I just did it on the airplane flight to my friend's wedding.
Did you have to give the what do they call it?
Maid of honor speech. I did. I crushed it. Made people laugh. Made people cry.
Did you tell
Had
anecdotes?
A little improv. I did. I told. Well, no. I told anecdotes from more recent times. But then I also. It was the sort of thing where I was, worried about it just because it was like a friend I'd had since like childhood growing up. And obviously we've been close ever since, but like over the last couple of years, she's lived in a totally different side of the country. So I wouldn't say like I'm the closest with her and her now husband, but I was like, dang, how am I going to get in this? But Made It Work was good. And then midway through the wedding, right before like speech times coming up, my parents were there because it was like a hometown friend wedding. And my mother, bless her heart, always doing journalism for me, comes up, she's like, Paris, I've been talking to Jessica. My friend's like, her family, I've got great news for you. I'm like, what? And she's like, I've checked with multiple sources during my friend, she lost both of her parents in college, and she's like, during like right after the vows concluded, after the ceremony, Jessica's aunt got 2 phone calls from Tim, Jessica's late father. It somehow showed up on her phone.
What?
And she like shown it to other people. And it's like, I don't know how someone with Tim's number is calling or right now. And she was like, I've got multiple sources that witnessed it. You should reference this in your speech. And I did. And people loved that. And I was like,
Well,
that's great.
Good on Mom for coming up with that juicy tidbit.
Listen, I was like, you got to have
Dad
people
calling
doing
from
the
beyond
ground.
the grave.
I was like, you got to have groundwork going on for the spooky vibes to incorporate in it. Fabio
right.
Martino was there. The chat asked. He was there.
Who? Oh,
Fabio Martino, my father.
Fabio was there. Yeah, looking good too. I saw the pictures.
Strong.
We're going to take a little break, final words, and our picks of the week coming up. Before we do that, though, I do want to give a little plug for our club. Yes, we raised the price. We've had the same price for 4 years, the whole time the club's been around. And, of course, every one of you who are already club members at that price will keep that price. That's our promise to you. But we hope we can get some new members at the $10 a month price. I still think it's a good deal. You get an awful lot for that. Access, of course, to our Discord. That's where we're going to do the AI user group on Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific. And it's where we're going to do our streams of keynotes from now on, so we avoid getting taken down. Monday, Micah Sargent and I are bringing our lunch boxes because we're going to do the Apple WWDC keynote at 10 a.m. And then at 1 p.m., we're going to do the State of the Union keynote. We've never done that before, but hey, we're there. We're going to stick around. And one of the good things about doing these events in the Club Twit Discord is you can participate. We want to get your comments as well. Stacy's book club's coming up. We've got a photography episode with Chris Marquardt. You still have about a week to take a geometric photo to submit. Micah's Crafting Corner. You also get ad-free versions of all the shows. You get animated GIFs with all the prices. You get access to some of the fun, best people like Darren and Dr. Do and Wad Fan and all the folks in the Discord. And by the way, it's not just during the shows. They're chatting and doing things, talking about the things that geeks care about all hours of the day and night because we have people from all over the world. The most important reason to join the club, though, of course, it supports us. About 25% of our operating costs come from the club. Without that, we'd have to cut back on shows, cut back on people, and we don't want to do that. So if you want to hear more of what you hear here, if you like what we're doing, if you want to support it, twit.tv/clubtwit. And we thank you so much for supporting everything we do. We really appreciate it. Well, Jeff isn't here, but he did leave us a pick of the week. He left us 2, one from himself. Most new cars in Norway are EVs. And actually, that's starting to be true all over Europe. Not Teslas, interestingly, but EVs for sure. And I'm an EV fan. I mean,
it is very interesting from Norway, given how cold, it is, that you would, I'd assume, have like more pronounced range anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, you get less mileage when it's cold, but range anxiety is over. I think overhyped.
Norway is also a very small place.
Small.
I guess you can't really drive that far. No offense, Norway.
There are people who have a lot of driving to do, but most people don't drive more than 25 miles to work and back. Yeah. So there are very few cars that wouldn't do that, and especially since you fill it up every night if you want, if you have a charger in your house.
And it's not like the climate's friendly to gas cars either.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it's just
I will say when I was there like 2 or 3 years ago, I did notice that a significant portion of the cars were EVs.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, it might be better because there's more liquids. There's more fluids in a gas car. So that's all the stuff that gets frozen, right?
That's a good point. Yeah. And Jeff's son, Jake, wanted us to know that David Cope, the father of AI music, passed away. Not the AI music that we're used to, the Suno beats. He created an algorithm in the 80s called the EMI algorithm. But what's interesting, it's spawned the same kind of questions about whether computers making music are a good thing or not. His algorithm was able to make music in the style of Bach and Mozart and other classical masters. David Cope passed away on May 4th at the age of 83. He created and even created the term generative music. He figured out how to program a computer to write classical music. The reason he did it, he was commissioned to compose an opera and was struggling with writer's block. So
he was desperate to find a compositional partner. New York Times writes, he found one in a floppy disk.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. I see if we could find the music. It'd be interesting if we could find it. I don't know if they have it on this New York Times. I guess not.
Oh, there is. If you scroll down, EMI composes in the style of Mozart, an excerpt from a sonata.
I wonder, can I play it?
Cope.
Depends who owns it.
Yeah.
The computer owns it. Let me. Here it is. This is supposedly Mozart, made by an AI in the 80s. Although it says it's
it was composed by AI, but a person still played it. Yeah, it was still played by a person.
So probably they own it somehow.
Not hearing it, Leo. I think you're.
I have to turn the original sound on. No, sorry. That's terrible.
I think it seems haunting. Melancholy.
It's haunting because it's like off.
I mean, but I feel like the tenor of it, is it, or tenor is the wrong word. Is it in like a minor key or something?
Yeah, it's very minor. Yeah. Huh. I have a pick because I realized Jeff wasn't going to be here, so I should throw a pick of my own in. Mm-hmm. Did you ever, is it time for you to go out and you run and you just don't feel like running it?
Yeah, but then what will my friends think?
Oh, that's a good question. That's why there's FakeMy.Run. FakeMyRun creates fake running routes. It allows you to draw custom realistic running routes. You can draw them anywhere and upload them to your Strava or your running application. And then people will think you actually worked out today.
Oh, I love this.
Isn't this brilliant?
So silly. They should use this to seed fake. Remember how Strava data was used to dox a military base somewhere in, I think, the Middle East?
Yes.
Someone should do a reverse version of that, like a alternative influence campaign of fake military people running in fake places.
I'm going to run around Paris. And look, I went out to the cemetery. I'm crossing the Pont Neuf. Back again. There you go. Nice little run of 10 kilometers. Took me an hour.
I like that you can include heart rate data.
Yeah, we want to fake the heart rate.
The pace,
there we go. There we go. And
that's so fun.
Yeah. Isn't that good? Let's just get the pace up and down here. I don't know how to do that.
The sad part is that this brings into question all those people who draw pictures when they're on their runs,
Yeah. Include heart rate data.
Oh, yeah, it's gotta be.
This is all very realistic. And I'm going to call it, I love running in Paris, France. All right, there we go. Oh, wait a minute.
Oh, you got to pony up if you want.
I got to pony up at $6 for 10 tokens. Well, nothing's free.
I'm just imagining being like, well, I'm too lazy to go out, so I'm going to pay $6 to make people believe I was.
Pick of the week, Paris.
My pick of the week is a very classic Paris pick. I was at my weird mall goth bodega cinema this weekend, and they started something called Hot Roach Summer, which is their summer screening series that's all roach themed kind of horror movies. Oh my
God. And there's more than one movie with roaches?
There's many. And this was a double feature with something called Roach and The Nest, but the one I really want to highlight is called The Nest, which if you play this Vimeo thing, you can see some clips from it. It is a fantastic 1988 B movie horror movie with incredible, like phantasmagorical, like SFX stuff. They have like the craziest like roach monsters. It's basically a small New England island town. Everything's good and sleepy and quiet until all of a sudden people start noticing more and more roaches.
Oh,
and they
God.
realize, could it potentially be that that mysterious company that's moved in to do development? And if you love a B horror movie with like really interesting practical effects, I would recommend The Nest. It's available on Tubi for free right now.
It's basically
it's not for the squeamish.
It's what Stranger Things was taken after. It was inspired by. Oh, look!
Basically,
yeah.
At one point, the roaches light a man's house on fire.
Look at it! Look at it, gleefully tweezing its twisters.
Yeah.
Oh, man,
the roaches. They do a lot.
Yeah.
There are roach zombies. It's a fantastic.
It's only horror
fantastic
movies.
time.
It's only horror movies. So no Joe's apartment.
So far,
no Joe's apartment, basically.
That's a great. So the movies in the series are Roach, which was a small, like a short dystopian, kind of short film that was honestly in 3D. I went in and I got the actual 3D paper.
They give you glasses.
It felt very retro. Then The Nest, which is the one I just described, which is phenomenal, and one I haven't seen yet is called Bug. It's a 1975 film. It says the final project behind B-movie hype man William Castle, as well as one of the few he's given screenwriting credit. Bug is a gnarly, under-the-radar entry in the natural horror canon. Bradford Dillman plays a level-headed professor whose logical world is set ablaze by a new species of cockroach with pyrotechnic abilities, building to a showdown between rational science and the cosmic unknown. Okay, I will be seeing this and giving you guys my full review once I
last year, Spectacle did Rat Summer.
Yeah, it's from the sicko. It's billed as Roach Summer from the sickos that brought you Rat Summer, and that's why I knew I had to go see it.
What's next? Spider Summer?
I mean, that's
all
good.
right, Paris. My nightmare's on you this time. Thank you so much, Paris Martineau. Appreciate it. Always great to see you, my dear.
Always great to be here.
Yes, and thanks
Even
again
we
to
hold down the fort, sans Jeff, sans Jake.
Yeah, that was hard. Yeah, just the two of us. Wow, I'm glad I had those wedding vows.
We almost got married. That's what happens.
Thanks to Jacob Ward, author of The Loop, and of course, the Rip Current is his a newsletter and podcast, theripcurrent.com, and a certain Paris Martineau appeared last week, so you can listen to that there at theripcurrent.com. We do Intelligent Machines every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. Next week, our guest will be Stephen Witt, author of The Thinking Machine. That should be interesting. Ooh. Yeah. I'm not sure what it's about, but we'll find out.
Are you going to read this one?
Oh, it's the history of NVIDIA. Yeah, I can't. You know what? I don't understand how this computer thing works. Well, they never send me books. They send me PDFs
I do think
now.
that if you don't read the books, you shouldn't tell the guests immediately that you haven't read the book.
I like to be honest. I do.
You would get along well with that guy who used ChatGPT to write his vows.
And then told his wife that was a mistake. Anyway, yeah, The Thinking Machine is the story of NVIDIA. Should be very interesting. It's actually quite an interesting story. Stephen Witt will be our guest. I hope you will join us next Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. You can watch us live, as I mentioned, on 8 different platforms. But, of course, after the fact, you can get a copy of all the shows at twit.tv/IM. We also have a YouTube channel dedicated to intelligent machines. Best way to get the show would be subscribe, though, in your favorite podcast client. There's audio and video of every episode. They're free, and they're wonderful, and they're long as hell. And,
also, if you're out there, you're listening to this, you've waited to the end of the credits, go out there, go on Apple Podcasts, go on Google Podcasts, leave us a 5-star review, and write something fun. And listen, if you write something fun in the review and it makes me laugh, I'll read it on the show. So try your best.
There you
go. People have been review bombing us, and we got to get that up to a respectable 4.5 and above. Yeah. So do us a solid.
And the more people that say they want the Craig Newmark jingle,
there have been some entrants that have said no Craig Newmark jingle, and I want their responses to be no. They've said not, I will think this is something I'll go into more when Jeff's here. They haven't said no jingle. They're just saying there should be a different custom jingle for Jeff.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
We gotta get the choir on it. Let us know what weird things do you want on the show. What thoughts do you have about what we're doing?
We're trying to think of some segments that we could do on the show. Fun little,
Yeah, if you've got a segment idea, if you've got vows for Leo to use with his wife and priest, put them there in the reviews for Apple or Google Podcasts. We might read them.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll see you next time on Intelligent Machines. Bye-bye.